This episode of Fresh and Buds is brought to you by Glue Minaris. This is the number one glue in all of Wraith. It keeps weapons together. It keeps equipment together. It keeps families together. It keeps my sanity together. This is the best glue that you can possibly get in all of Wraith. But we thank them for their sponsorship and for helping us out with this set review. It is part 2, and I hope you enjoy this part 2, brought to you by The Glue. Go.
Fresh and
All right, we are here at the Warrior cards now. Certainly, I changed real quick. You couldn't even see it. I have a beanie on. It's a small beanie. It's one of those small beanies, Bill. I don't know if you've ever seen these.
I've seen small beanies before.
Yeah, they are, they're all the rage these days. I get a little nervous when I go into the coffee shop that maybe somebody comes in with a smaller beanie, but then I got to fight them to see who's the top small beanie guy. But alas, we are here at the Warrior cards and part 2 of the set review, the constructed set review. We're going to get right into it because we're raring to go, and we're going to start with a big bang. Casai of the Golden Sand, the upgrade of our old Casai young hero that we used to have, that actually living legend. Now we have new toys to play with. Casai of the Golden Sand is a warrior hero with 4 intellect, 40 health, and then the blitz, it matches 4 intellect, 20 health, and has a really unique ability here. First, says if you've drawn a card this turn, your sword attacks cost 1 less to activate. That sounds pretty good. Well, how are you going to draw cards, Bill? Well, Casai also has a once per turn action. Banish 2 reds and 2 yellow cards from your graveyard. The next time a weapon you control hits a hero this turn, create a gold token, which is quite good. That also has go again. I should probably finish reading the ability. This is awesome. I think Casai is really, really cool. I love I play Levi. Anything that's messing around with the graveyard, I'm already all in. Casai looks like a hero that I really want to play. I love Warrior and the way they play, and this seems to kind of do it on a different axis, which is pretty neat. So we'll see how good the rest of the cards are, but on its face value, the design of Casai is a fresh to death to me.
I fully agree. We've seen this style of effect, the very first one, in just Courage Bladehold. And obviously Courage does block for 2 as well, so there's something to be said about the value that provides. But I mean, just giving your sword attacks -1 cost for the entire turn if you've drawn a card is pretty great. Unfortunately, I don't believe we're going to have a lot of ways to make coppers. I was going to say bronzes. What the hell? There's not going to be a lot of ways to make copper, much like what the previous Kasai's sort of shtick was. So Blood on Our Hands isn't going to be as relevant. You're not going to have the big sort of pop-off turns where you're attacking with each of your swords a bunch of times, but she does appear to sort of bring herself to a more consistent, almost like mid-range, maybe closer to control style, because you do have the longer game. If you're using reds and yellows, you can sort of recycle those into a gold, and then you pay into the gold to draw a card, which then makes your sword attacks cost 1 less, and it just sort of like allows you to have sort of a higher floor on each of your turns. So yeah, everybody's going crazy for her, and I definitely see why. I think she's going to be a really, really big, impactful force in the metagame. Warriors in general, I'm just a big fan of, and I think that they knocked it out of the park with Kasai's design. So yeah, fresh to death, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see that Warriors perhaps might be the class that's going to make the best use out of gold, at least, bang for your buck here. And, if you just think about just Casai, right, you pop the gold, and let's say you're on a turn that you can swing with both your Centari Sabers. You already made up for those resources. So the golds essentially pop for free with an additional resource if you pitched a blue into it. Now, we do have another fun little warrior here, and that is Olympia, Prize Fighter. This
Yeah.
is an interesting one. What does he do?
Yeah, so Olympia is definitely an interesting one. He is another warrior hero. He has the same bog standard 4 intellect, 40 health, or 20 health in Blitz. He's a warrior, I think I said that already. But his ability, nice and simple. The first time each of your attacks wins a wager, create a gold token. So, interesting way that this is worded. Because you can have multiple wagers on an attack, this doesn't mean that every time you have a wager that wins, you get a gold. But if you attack multiple times and have a wager on each of those attacks and you win all of them, you get a gold for each of those. It only triggers once per attack, but you can get multiple within a turn. I think he's sweet. There is unfortunately sort of a downside of there isn't a payoff for the gold that actually lives in the deck. There's a very popular meme that's been going around of that sort of bell curve of how smart players are, and at the bottom and top of the scale, it's the gold is the payoff. And honestly, I'm into that. I really am. I think that gold itself, just being able to turn a blue into a resource and a card, kind of like what you were saying with Kasai's gold tokens, I think is totally reasonable. The fact that he can make them really easily too is like pretty solid. This is sort of what I've been building up to in referencing how I think that warrior is like the perfect wager class, because you're wanting to trick your opponent anyway and get that 1 damage over. Warrior's really practiced at that, especially with like Darthia, just getting that 1 damage over each time so that you can tick up your Dawn Blade. But yeah, I really like Olympia. I'm really excited to play Olympia. He's got some really great cards and support. So yeah, I think that he's going to be probably less impactful overall than Kasai if I had to guess. But for me, he's still like a high fresh. I'm still really, really excited to play this hero. Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, Olympia is very interesting to me because you look at the kind of face value here. It's not a lot going on, right? It's one line of text really, and then you can just let your imagination run wild from there, because what kind of cards are going to be printed for Olympia? And you brought up that meme that the gold is the payoff. Yeah, it is. People were playing Crown of Dominion in decks before. Mm-hmm. Giving up like block on your headpiece for a gold, obviously there's some synergies there, but obviously Olympia is also going to have those synergies, and yeah, there might be a world where we're playing Royal Olympia, and then all of a sudden Regicide becomes the best card in the format. But we'll see. This is I love the simplistic design here. I think it's straightforward. I've talked about in previous podcasts where I look at Olympia versus Casai, and I'm like, okay, Casai is the expert level hero. Olympia is the more like, you can give this to a beginner player and say, hey, this is plain and simple. This is what you got to do. Win your wagers, right? It might not be the easiest hero to play, but in terms of understanding and kind of teaching people, I think this is great to see. So let's see what kind of warrior cards we got. Now let's get to our Majestics here. Well, actually, no, we're not getting to our Majestics. We're getting to Centari Saber. Centari Saber's back. That's a reprint. We don't need to talk about that because we do have cooler weapons coming up. And I shouldn't say cooler weapons because we have a hot weapon right now.
Say hotter weapons.
Yeah. The first one is Hot Streak, which is a one-handed sword. So a lot of one-handed weapons going on in this set. It attacks for 2, and it has a once per turn action, pay 1 resource to attack. Classic kind of activation there for a one-handed sword. When this is defended by 1 or more attack action cards, Hot Streak's attacks get go again this turn. So this card is bonkers. It's a rare also, I should say. I think this is maybe one of the better swords we've seen in a long time. And I'll explain why. I'm looking at this for Darthia, right? So Hot Streak's attacks get go again, right? That means if this happens to hit, you can attack again with this Hot Streak with go again, and then you can attack with the other Hot Streak, or even the Quicksilver Dagger if you have that, and that has go again. All of a sudden, you're off to the
Yeah.
races and you can do some really cool stuff. And that's just like a Dorinthia thing. I think this is probably going to be really good in a lot of the warriors. Um, I like it, the modality of being able to play one of these, one of something else. I think of like Kasai, might want to play one Hot Streak, one Centari Saber, or something like that. I'm a big fan of this card. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a fresh to death. We're going to see a lot of Hot Streak in the coming months.
Yeah, I think so too. Az has been really hot on this card too, pun definitely intended, because he's looking to branch out from Ranger. Just for those of you who aren't aware, he still loves Azalea, but he's like, I need something to do in the offsets when there aren't Ranger cards, and I think he's looking at Warrior specifically because they have a really interesting sort of like mind game style gameplay. And he's really into that, and he keeps referencing Hot Streak as like, this is the reason why I really like the mind games, because you attack with a Hot Streak, your opponent is then forced to decide what they want to block with or if they want to block, and you can be like, okay, well, I'm gonna like attack reaction wager this, and now I get a gold because you didn't want to block with this, and then it's like, oh, if you do want to block with it, then I have reprise cards. And even if you block with a non-attack action still, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm still going to be able to like maybe you decide to block with a non-attack action that you wanted to keep because you don't want to give this go again. Like, it's just, there's a lot of axes that this works on, and I think it does all of them really well. It's also just a really efficient card. It's just a 1-for-2 that, like you said, you can attack with it twice in Dorinthia. Even if you don't have another way to attack with a different weapon, you can then do something at the end of your turn, which Dorinthia usually doesn't get to do, which is sweet. You could maybe even run that, like the blessing. I forget what the name of it is, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, there's the aura that at the beginning of your next turn it pops and gives your weapon attack +3 or whatever. That you can weave that in. I don't know if that's good, but it's something you can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I think fresh to death as well. I think this card is really strong. And again, for a rare, the design of these rares has been off the charts. Really, really good job.
Yeah. I'm windmill slamming this in draft. Yeah, I can tell you that
Oh, yeah.
much. The next card we have is, tell us what it is, Bill.
Parry Blade. So this is a really weird card, and I love it a lot, actually. So Parry Blade is a warrior weapon equipment dash sword, one-handed. And I say that specifically because this is the first weapon that is also classified as an equipment. And the reason for that is because it has once per turn action, 1 resource to attack for 2. It also has Blade Break and 0 defense, because if it's defending a weapon attack, it gets +2 defense. So weird, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like, it's just a weird card. It's really cool because it's just another sort of +2 life. You could have this as like your offhand in certain decks. You can just have this as, this will be like damage that I can weave in until I need it to be 2 health, which I think is totally reasonable. We've seen similar styles of like, I'll use this until I don't need it anymore, just with like Flick Knives and Arachne. I'm just trying to get the extra value off of like hitting with whichever one of the daggers it is. It's like Orbido classed or whatever. But yeah, being able to leverage that and have it be modal within the game, I think is going to be a really interesting idea. I don't know if it's actually going to be good, but the fact that it blocks for 2 is actually kind of relevant. And again, because it's a one-handed weapon, you just run, Hot Streak in your main hand and Parry Blade in your other, and you're just like, okay, cool, bam, and then you still have Hot Streak for the rest of the game. So, I like it a lot. From the design alone, I give it a fresh. Warrior weapon equipment sword is a cool type line.
yeah.
And yeah, I like Parry Blade. I think it's cool. I think it's potentially really good.
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of people had been hoping for a while now. Even people have made some predictions. Bud Capolo had, I think made a card version of this like a year ago or something like that. And it is, it's interesting. I don't, it's hard to evaluate because I'm thinking it's probably going to live in some sideboards. You know, obviously I want to push it to the max. I'm like, I'm running 2 Parry Blades. I'm tanking up. Like, I don't care. But the problem with that is most warriors don't really have much to do or to close out the game when they don't have a weapon. Bolton could possibly do it, but it's still really cool. And I think I got to give it like a sideboard low fresh. I'm sure there's some like mirror matches or just versus warrior that you want to bring this in just as a little bit extra beef. But super cool design. Super happy that we have something like this and that they're willing to print it, and probably we'll get some more stuff like that down the road.
Definitely.
Now, next we have another legendary, and this is a humdinger. I will say that. This is Grains of Bloodspill. I'm sorry. I almost lost it there. But no, we're good. Grains of Bloodspill. Gosh. Warrior equipment chest. Holy smokes. It's been a long day, folks. It blocks for 2. Okay, great. Has temper. Great. Whenever a weapon attack you control hits, you may pay 1 resource. If you do, create a Vigor token. Holy smokes. This card is insane. I mean, the block value here is incredible, right? I think there's no doubting that. And then just that ability to, you know, there are times in almost any warrior that I can think of where you have a little bit of extra change left over at the end of your turn. And to be able to turn, like kind of bank it for the next turn is pretty incredible. Because in a lot of scenarios at the floor, if you block out, your Vigor token pops, you can still poke with your sword. Right?
Yep.
That is just so good. I mean, imagine, actually, I was about to say, imagine if you're running Tunic too, but you can't. That's 2 chests. We're not at that hero yet. We're going to get a hero like that, but probably 10 years, but
you can just run a chest in each of his equipment slots.
Yeah. But no, this card is, I mean, this is clearly a fresh death. Love the art. Just, oh God, this might be, honestly, in the running for one of my favorite cards in the set.
This card's crazy. We've seen the impact that something like tectonic plating has on a class like Guardian, and this, while it's like a little bit more limited, because obviously with tectonic plating you can just pay into it. You can just start your turn with that. With Grains, you have to have a weapon attack hit, but it can be multiple times a turn. If you just have that much extra resources, you can bank 2 resources into next turn and make, like you say, blocking out not that bad. Like, you keep 1 card in hand, and it's like a 1-cost attack reaction. You attack in with your weapon, and you still have a resource floating for your attack reaction on basically nothing. Like, that's still a good turn. Yeah, and the fact that it blocks for 2, like, they just gave everything temper 2 in this set, I feel like, and that's crazy. Yeah, I think this card's cracked. I think this card's super good. It probably takes over in most cases from Courage of Bladehold. There's probably, like, I mean, Bolton will probably still want to play Courage because you have the, like, Lumina Ascension pop-off turns, but I think basically every other warrior just prefers this. It blocks the same amount, and you get value over the course of the game instead of just in 1 turn. I love it. Fresh to death. Really, really big fan of Grains. Yeah.
Pretty incredible, but you're pretty familiar with the next card. You're not?
I really am. So this is actually the Spike Feeders preview card. It's Olympia's Specialization Helmet, Prized Galea. So I think this card's crazy. Once again, it's a warrior equipment head. It has temper 2. And at attack reaction speed, you can pay a resource and destroy it to give target weapon attack you control, or you can make target weapon attack you control wager a gold token with the defending hero. So, full disclosure, when I first saw this card, I was just like, okay, like, whatever, it's fine. But then as cards started to get revealed, I realized all of the sort of wager a gold, just anything, in the set are all things that are very telegraphed, things that are like you have to set up with it and then you attack, and it's like, okay, this attack is wagering a gold. This starts in play and stays in play, basically, like until you need it. You can block for 2, so it gains you 2 life, it stays around, and then what's the one thing that warrior likes to do? Likes to choose their moment, choose their spot. So this just sits around until you basically guarantee that this happens, and then because of Olympia's ability, this actually reads 1 resource, destroy this, make 2 gold. That's like such an insane rate for 2 gold that I can't even explain it. I think this card is like, if you're playing Olympia, you play Prized Galea. I think this is how the deck starts. You play like Olympia, Prized Galea, and then like 2 or 3 cash in, depending on if you're playing Blitz or CC. Yeah, fresh to death, easy, high fresh to death. Card's great, card's crazy.
Yeah, this card's pretty incredible, right? This is, I guess this could be the main helmet for Olympia. I have to imagine it will be, and then perhaps in I guess matchups that you don't care about blocking, you can bring in like Crown of Dominion, where you just get the gold and you don't have to like do anything for it. But that being said, this does also give you 2 golds in a way, so it could just be the choice here. I think it's awesome. Olympia's like so like straightforward. It's like, no, I'm wagering, I'm getting gold, and that is, and I kind of just love that. He's no nonsense, and this is just showing that that's the case. Fresh to death in Olympia, and I mean, it's just insane value at rare, and I'm glad it's at rare, especially since we're talking about constructed. This is going to be easy to get. This is like the deck becomes way more affordable, and I think I really like that. We saw that with the Chapeau and now the Galea. So these fancy names for these for these headpieces. Next we have Hood of Red Sand. This is Kasai specialization equipment piece. Now this one is 1 block and has Battle Worn, which is still quite good. Attack reaction. 1 resource, banish a red and yellow card from your graveyard, destroy this. Target sword attack gets, when this hits, draw a card. This is pretty good, I think. I don't know if this is good enough to crack into constructed. I'm not really really clued in on how Kasai is being built so far, but there's just the 1 block is really what's holding me up. If this was temper 2, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, we're all in.
Yeah.
But being able to block the 1 and keep it around, that's fine. And the 1 resource to draw a card is nice, but you also have to give up your a red and a yellow out of your graveyard, where you're also trying to do that with Kasai's ability, so that kind of cuts in on that. This one's a hard one to evaluate for me. I think it's good. The value is certainly there. I just don't think it's definitely not on the rate of Olympia and Betsy's, for example. So I look at this and I'm like, okay, this is like a high stale, low fresh. I think it's a fine value, like, in terms of budget. I think it's going to be fine, but I don't think it's going to be good enough in like the higher echelons of competitive play.
I agree. I think it's tough to, like, a lot of these other hats, like, you're comparing them against Crown of Providence, and like Prized Galea, I would rather run Prized Galea over Crown of Providence, and specifically Olympia, because it does what the deck wants to do. I'd rather run Good Time Chapeau and Betsy over Crown of Providence, because it gives you like consistent ability to wager and value over the game. It still gains you the 2 life that Crown is known for. That's like the whole deal. This doesn't do that. And I think just based on my first impressions with Kasai, you're probably going to want to play, like I said, kind of more of a mid-rangey style play. So having the ability to, have the 2 life from Crown, as well as smooth out a particular draw, instead of just having this be, I'm going to attack in with this sword. This is another sort of thing where you can wait for the right time to make sure that the weapon's going to hit and you're going to draw the card. But that just feels a little bit less impactful than having the extra life and being able to sort of selectively smooth out a hand. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is probably more for uh, limited, just as something that Kasai has access to. Like you said, I don't think it's a bad budget option because obviously not everybody can just go out and buy a Crown of Providence. So it's certainly not like a bad card, but when you're comparing it, especially in constructed to Crown of Providence, I don't think it quite matches up. So I think I'm probably right around high stale like you were. Yeah, I think it's crazy that this basically just says one resource destroy this draw card, and I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so tough too. It's just the fact that it's working. Like unlike the other ones, it's working against what your hero's trying
Yeah.
to do. Now, I could see this the power level of it being like near the Galea and the Chapeau. I think if it said part of the cost was put a red and yellow card from your banish zone back into your graveyard, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, look at that. Cool. That's so cool. But, LSS didn't do that. What the heck, man? No. So
it's okay. We'll get you on with Brian Gottlieb. You can you can swear at him all you want.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'll love that. What's this next card do?
So this next one is actually in the same sort of like vertical cycle as raw meat that we had talked about earlier for Brute. This is Beckan Applause. So this is the warrior arm equipment, the gloves. It has temper 0 because it has if you control an agility token, this gets +1, and if you control a vigor token, this gets +1. This sits right along with the other ones. I just don't think that this is going to be consistent enough to really get you the value that you want. In order for you, the thing that really sort of hangs me up on this one is unless you have exactly both when you want to block with this the one time, if you only have one, it just immediately breaks. So it's Iron Rot. It's Iron Rot that sometimes has upside if your deck comes together well enough. So yeah, I don't really feel the need to elaborate more than that. I don't think this is very good. I think it's for limited. I think it's for draft, probably. Yeah, rotten. Don't play this. Play something else.
Yeah, this card is not going to be getting any applause from me, so it's certainly a rotten. And yeah, that whole cycle has just been that, right? And it's just, we have, especially Warrior has so many great hand slots existing already. Yeah. So it's going to be a no from us. Now, the next card, I have a feeling is not going to be a no. This is Blade Flurry. This is a Majestic. It is a Warrior attack reaction. It blocks for 3. Which is pretty important. 0 cost. It's a red. Target weapon attack gets +2. Your next weapon attack this turn gets +2. I mean, this is just unreal. I mean, nothing. There's not much to talk about, right? It's just obviously you want to throw this on. Like if you're Centari Sabers or hot streaking, and you can go, +2 to the first one, then all of a sudden your second one's coming in for a lot. It's great in Darthia, right? Give +2. And now the second time it attacks is going to have the +2. It is a 0 for 4 at reaction speed. I think, that is better than a regular 0 for 4. So it is, and broken over 2 different attacks. It's a fresh to death, no doubt. I mean, I love the art. This is pretty incredible. And also, I gotta say, if we get a Ice Warrior at some point, an elemental Ice Warrior, and their sword isn't called Parry Blade, I'm gonna be pretty upset. So, LSS, please. That sounds so cool. But
I love that for the record.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, Blade Flurry is crazy. This is the first 0 for 4 attack reaction that Warrior's gotten access to. Warrior is all about specific breakpoints and making blocks awkward for people. Like even on just a base, oh my god, even on just a base Dawnblade, this turns both of your Dawnblade attacks into 5s. Like that's such an awkward number, and then you buff it up with literally anything else, and it's so much worse. Like, yeah, this card's nuts. I really want to put Hatchet Darthia back together because Hatchet's getting like it's just target weapon attack. It's not target two-handed or target sword or dagger or whatever. It's just weapon. I love that. yeah, Fresh to Death. This is the new auto include in Warrior decks. You just want to play a full set of this. It's so good.
It really is. It really is. So cool. Now, what about the next Majestic we have here? What does this do?
So this one was revealed by my good friend Red Zone Rogue, also known as Kel. He is a very big fan of this card, and so am I, especially because of the art. For anybody who played Diablo 2, this is the Javazon. This is the Amazon back in action. This is Shift the Tide of Battle. It's a warrior attack reaction. It pitches for 2, costs 0, and blocks for 3. And it reads, target warrior attack with power greater than its base gets go again, which most of the time when you're attacking with a weapon in warrior, it has a greater power than its base. That's kind of what the class is known for. And the next time an opposing hero is dealt damage this turn, you create an agility token. So in a way, this is like the go again version of Blade Flurry, except it's you get go again this turn and next turn. This card's crazy. This card's really, really good. Like, you were already playing Glint the Quicksilver to give go again. That one also draws a card, which is kind of cool. But like, then you were also playing things like Hit and Run to make sure that you had enough sources of giving your weapon go again. So agility tokens scale super, super well into Warrior. And yeah, this is just 2 sources of go again for free, kind of. It's nuts. I think this card is really, really strong. The things that are sort of working against it compared to Glint the Quicksilver is that it is a yellow and that it doesn't draw a card. The draw from Glint the Quicksilver is actually fairly relevant. But I think even with that, Warrior lives and dies by giving go again, being able to attack twice. That's like the whole thing that the class wants to do. So yeah, I think this card's crazy. Another Fresh to Death. They're really knocking it out of the park with these Warrior cards.
Yeah, this is quite good. I don't know if it's not quite Blade Flurry for me. It's probably like a low Fresh to Death, maybe really high Fresh. The only reason is the requirement to have your weapon or your warrior attack is probably worth noting to have a greater power than its base is like, it's going to happen pretty often, but there are times where Glint is going to do this just because they blocked, right? And you didn't really require anything else. Now, that being said, I do think this is still quite good. I really like it in Bolton because that happens way more. And Bolton's also doing all kinds of warrior attacks, not just weapons, and they're getting buffed because of his ability. So, like, I think this ends up being like a really solid Fresh to Death for Bolton, and then probably in the high Fresh, low Fresh to Death range for the rest of the heroes. But the value is really there, right? And being able to set up your next turn is excellent. Love this card. And I love the next card too. Up the ante. I mean, this is why I love Olympia. Like, and I think this is why a lot of people love Olympia, because it's just these wacky cards with his basic ability that you're just like, I just want to jam all these cards. And Up the Ante is one of them. This is a warrior attack reaction. Blocks for 3. It is a blue and has the cost X. It's his specialization. It says choose X +1. Target attack, wagers, and agility. I'm going to just say target attack, wagers, and agility, or gold, or vigor token. And then also you can have target attack get +Y, where Y is the number of times it has wagered this turn. So... at a base, you can play this for 0 and choose one of those things, right? You're probably going to just choose one of the token wagers if you're going to do that. Now, the goal here is to just pitch a blue. I look at this as a 3 cost, right? To get +3 and 3 different wagers at reaction speed. I think that's insane. I think this card's awesome. It's, I mean, obviously an auto include. It's a blue that blocks 3, like at the bare minimum. This card's insane. This is Fresh to Death. Obviously only Olympia, but Olympia is going to really love this card, and it's going to win a lot of games. Either this turn or the next turn.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they made it a blue. That's so crazy. Yeah, and like, again, with Olympia's ability, this basically reads, if you are using this in a capacity where you're going to be winning the wager, it actually creates 2 gold tokens. It's 2 gold, an agility, and a vigor, and then gives it +3 for a singular blue. Yeah, this card's crazy. This is another like fresh death in Olympia. If you're playing Olympia, you just play this card. Like very, very easy windmill slam into the deck.
Yeah.
Also a big fan of the rules text of +Y.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time that they've had another variable.
Yeah, I mean, as in your opponents could be saying, "Why are you doing this to me?"
Yeah.
Now, what does commanding performance do?
Oh my god. Okay, so commanding performance is a reference to another card that will become very obvious in a second. It's a warrior action. It's a red. It costs 1 blocks for 3. It has go again, and it says your next warrior attack this turn gets +3. Already a pretty good baseline for a buff. And then until end of turn, your warrior attacks again. When this is defended by 1 or more attack action cards, destroy a card in the defending hero's arsenal. So, kind of command and conquer. It is slightly more limited, obviously, because it leaves it up to your opponent, where they would have to block with attack action cards. But I do see this as like a sideboard command and conquer, essentially, in a deck and potentially a hero, like for somebody like Darthia, that really doesn't want to play attack actions at all, because you usually play one of Nourishing Emptiness. So if you wanted to have like a command and conquer effect, you would be ruining the Nourishing Emptiness potential value. So this keeps Nourishing Emptiness alive, and also it's a buff for the rest of the turn. So even if you don't hit on the first one, and you're playing, not Darthia, and you can still attack with another weapon, this buff is just still around and makes your opponent either suck a bunch of damage or have to block with an attack action to not die, and then they lose their arsenal too. Like, I'm just a big fan of arsenal interaction in general. So I really like this card. I think it is more of a sideboard card than a mainboard card, because against somebody like Kano, a 1 for 3 just like kind of doesn't get there. But still a huge fan. Really like this card. I think this is like a high fresh sideboard in sort of very heavy attack action matchups.
Yeah. I think this card is quite good. I love the continued kind of paradigm that's, hey, listen, you don't have to play CNC. This is awesome that they keep seeing this for individual classes, and it's great. And CNC is still going to be good. Don't worry about it, folks. It's still going to be a great card. It's be a classic, and you're always going to want some in some certain decks. Now, I look at commanding performance, and I agree with you. I would say it's more like it makes the main deck, and then you pull it out when you run into your odd Darinthias, Darinthias, Kanos, and what else? I guess probably Dromai to a certain extent, but even Dromai this could punish. But it's just good enough, and the fact that it's a CNC that is progressing your initial game plan already, which is the best thing about it. And I'm super. I don't know if I'm excited that this is a card, to be honest with you. But also,
I know that Az isn't.
Yeah, but it is certainly cool. Now, the next card is, well, this is interesting. We're getting allies in a different class. This is Raise an Army. It is a warrior action. It blocks for 3. It's a yellow. It costs 0. It is a Casai specialization. So this is a big flavor kind of key moment for Casai. Casai is going to try to raise an army, right? With the gold that she has. So as an additional cost to play this, destroy X gold you control, create X Centari Sellsword tokens, go again. Now, the tokens, I don't have them in front of me, but I believe they are 2 attack, 3 health. Or no, 3 attack, 2 health.
3 attack, 2 health.
Yeah, you could read them if you got it up.
Yeah, I pulled it up. So Centari Sellsword is a warrior token mercenary ally that has 3 attack and 2 health. Once per turn action, 1 resource attack, go again. But it can only attack if you've attacked with a weapon this turn. Why?
I don't know. I mean, this is the game plan. It seems like for Kasai to me, right? You're playing this like you kind of mentioned mid-rangey kind of game, creating some gold. Perhaps you're like, well, maybe you use the gold, maybe you don't because you want to make a bunch of these, and every time you attack with a weapon, it gets go again. Whether it's a hot streak or you glint the Quicksilver or something like that, all of a sudden you're just value towning with a bunch of 1-for-3s, that were out on the board. And that is pretty incredible. It's going to be interesting. I think once you don't have tempo, they're not going to matter, right? They're just going to be out there,
Yeah.
and they can be killed, and it's going to be hard to make more of them. I think it's going to be hard to like build back up the gold, then find your other Raisin army. But that being said, this is a huge effect in one card, and I have to give it like a solid fresh. I can't quite push it up to fresh to death because there are some weaknesses here, as there should be. I think if this was an auto win, it's not fun and not good for the game. But it's very cool, and it could lead to a really big win. But also, were those 3-2 allies better as cards drawn from activating the gold? That would be determined in the game. So solid fresh for Raisin Army.
Yeah. I think that the most impactful Raisin Army is going to be the first one that you play. Any any subsequent ones, I feel like you've probably used, like especially if you're making gold off of Kasai's ability, you can only do that a finite number of times in a game. And the cost associated with it is relatively high, having to use or discard somehow 2 reds and 2 yellows just to make 1 gold. So you're probably going to want to make like probably 2 or 3 golds. I think 2 or 3 golds is like a fine time to pop off Raisin Army, because you're able to turn a blue into 6 or 9 damage essentially. After you factor in get and go again with a weapon and attacking with it, being able to run that low to the ground, especially like late in the game. If you pop this off late in the game, you kind of just early Kodachi lock your opponent, which is kind of a miserable thing to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why they decided to give allies to another class other than illusionist. I think that was like that was fine. We didn't need more, but they did it, and I do think that it's a very good thing this isn't an Olympia card, because I feel like you could probably pretty consistently do this for like 6 in Olympia.
Oh yeah, my God.
And just like you don't even attack with all of them every turn, but you just have them available. You just have them like on retainer, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm right there with you. It is a strong card, but it does have downsides. I think in multiples it gets weaker, but you also want to run multiples so that you can hit it at the time that you want it. So like probably a fresh, maybe bordering on low fresh, but maybe that's also copium because I don't want it to be good.
Yeah.
Because the idea of facing down like 4 or 5 of these cell swords is like very tilting to me.
Well, it's funny, right? You raise your army the first time, and then the other 2 you just block with, like unless you have some gold running like laying around, and then it fulfills.
Yeah, they're still useful.
Then it gives you yellows in your graveyard. Everything makes sense here. But that being said, I think we're stuck on fresh now. The next card is. Do you want to talk about it here, Bill?
Yeah. So the next one is Cut the Deck, which is for those at home who are not looking at the stream and looking at the card art, it's a very funny pun because the guy has a sword and he's cutting a deck of cards in half. It's very funny. This is a warrior attack reaction. It comes in all 3 colors because we're now into the rares. Costs 1, blocks for 3, and it reads target warrior attack gets +3, +2, +1. If it's defended by an attack action card, draw a card, then put a card from your hand or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. So kind of a weird, like, not really even a side grade, just sort of a reference to what's the other? There's another warrior attack reaction that draws and then puts a card back on top.
One of the Iron Songs. Not
Yeah,
response, but the other one. The one
Yeah.
for 3.
Yeah, there's a 1 for 3 that reprise draws a card and then you put a card back on top. So definitely interesting in that case, because it doesn't require reprise. Well, it kind of does. It's a more narrow reprise. It has to be defended not only by a card from hand, but an attack action card. But then you get to draw a card and then potentially keep the card in hand by bottoming your arsenal. So kind of similar to a like a Crown of Providence style, getting a card back into your hand. Um, I don't necessarily think this is the type of buff that warriors need. Like we were kind of saying um, with what is it, commanding performance. Like not every deck is going to be running enough attack actions that they'll need to block with them every turn. This effect maybe feels like less impactful, so maybe your opponent just blocks with an attack action anyway and lets you do the thing. Kind of hard to say. I don't really feel this one though. Warriors already have so many like really good attack reactions that this one just feels like medium, and that's probably like not good enough. So I think I'm probably stale. I think I'm like mid stale on cut the deck. Feels fine in like limited, but in constructed we have so many attack reactions.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's like a mid stale. It's like there is uses here, and card selection is good. It's good to have, and you can draw into perhaps something that's better than what you had. A lot like that other card, which we already have. So it's hard to say if this really makes the cut. There, literally, or pun intended. But
Hell yeah.
it has all these synergies in draft and limited because one, you can get rid of a block out of your arsenal, and two, you could put a good card on top for clash and yada 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 yada. So like I just don't love it in constructed, but that's okay. It's a good option. It's a nice option to have. It's still decent stats, so like it could be good enough down the road for other reasons that we don't see yet. Now, next we have Fatal Engagement. This is describing my first marriage. This is another rare. Comes in all 3 colors of warrior attack reaction. It blocks for 3. Love those reactions that are blocking for 3. It costs 2, which I don't really love. But play this only if an attack action card is defending this chain link. So we're seeing a lot of this, but it does say target attack gets +5, and then +4, and then +3 in the coinciding colors. I don't love this card. It is unreal. Like 2 for 5 at reaction speed is pretty nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Is 2 resources gonna make the cut in some decks? I just don't know. I think that's a little heavy, and I could see it being great and limited. And I'm about to go to a pre-release tomorrow. I will lose to this card. I will tell you, but I don't think I'm gonna lose to it in constructed. I mean, if you have 2 resources lying around, I guess you can pummel, but like not every. I mean, Warrior's not getting a lot of pummel nonsense, but with the swords. But I don't know. I'm pretty low on this card. I'm gonna give it like a low stale. I think it's powerful, but I just don't know if it's gonna make a fit into any deck.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's like from my experience with Warrior, because you have so many things that you want to spend resources on anyway, like you have to attack with your weapon, you have to buff your weapon somehow. Usually you'll want to spend like 2, maybe 3 resources total on that entire interaction. This like doesn't give go again, which is pretty like it would be crazy if it did give go again, to be fair. Like to be completely real with you, if this gave go again, it'd be insane. But the fact that it isn't a source of that and costs 2 is just like a lot. And in Warrior, if I'm paying 2 for an attack reaction, it's going to be route, which is essentially a +6. So this doesn't quite hit that mark. Obviously, like not all cards can or should be route. That card, I hate playing against it. It's too good. But yeah, I don't know. This feels very limited card. I like maybe the blue potentially because +3 is still fine. And but yeah, this feels almost like worse than having to worry about reprise because again, this is like more narrow than reprise, where it has to be not only blocked by a card, but it has to be an attack action card specifically. So yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling pretty low stale on Fatal Engagement. Um, it's big numbers,
It's big numbers. I
that's for
will
sure.
say it also is target attack, so like
Yeah,
there is some flexibility there. It would be funny if you're attacking with a CNC and you
that
leave
was
the two
exactly what I was.
resources, and then they're like, "Oh, they got pummel," and then they just block the 10, and you're like, "Nope, I got Fatal
It's
Engagement.
11.
I don't build good decks.
Oh, that would be so punishing.
Here's an 11 for you. Now, what
Ugh.
is take the upper hand?
So take the upper hand is another attack reaction that I actually like quite a bit. This is warrior attack reaction. It costs 0, comes in all 3 colors, blocks for 3, and play this only if you've wagered this chain link. Target attack gets +3, +2, +1. So this is essentially an Iron Song response that doesn't require input from your opponent
Hmm.
because you are the one that controls whether or not you're wagering. And this is like red Iron Song response is a great attack reaction. And like it's a 0 for 3. The downside is if your opponent declares no blocks, then like you can't use it to push for lethal. This one works as long as you have the ability to wager. There's it's kind of tough because there aren't as many very like super consistent ways to like make sure that you're wagering every turn. Whereas every turn you attack, your opponent could block with a card from hand. It's kind of a weird balancing equation that way. But I still do like take the upper hand just as an option because the 0 for 3 that blocks for 3 is still really good. I do like the reds of this. Honestly, I think this is like pretty. I would say like maybe low fresh, but still pretty fresh. The only reason it's low is because you maybe don't have a consistent way to wager every single turn. But I feel like you'll be able to do it relatively consistently, and in those cases, this card's great because it can push to help you win the wager, or it can push for damage to end the game, and doesn't require your opponent to do anything at all.
Yeah, yeah. You make a great point that like that is the upper hand. Oh, it has the upper hand on reprise in that way. And I like, yet again, I like that it says target attack. It's not weapon attack.
Mhm.
That is very important. We're going to probably see some regular attack actions that have wager built into them. So there will be deck building, like relevant things there with take the upper hand. So I like it. I think it's a solid fresh. Olympia probably only. I don't know how much wagering Kasai is going to do, but this like good value at the red certainly. I don't really see the blue and yellow seeing play. Maybe the blue if you just need a good blue that can push. It's better than a lunging press, I guess. So I don't know, but we'll see. I do like these target attacks for
Yeah,
warrior.
keeps things nice and open. Like it keeps your options available, which is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely, and it allows deck building to be a little bit more fluid with warriors. Just like it's not all weapons all the time. We do now reach the commons. We have Agile Engagement, comes in all 3 colors, is a warrior attack reaction. It blocks for 2. We're back to the 2s. Costs 1, and it says target warrior attack gets +3, 2, and 1 based on the color. If it's defended by an attack action card, create an agility token. Now, this is kind of interesting. This is a attack reaction that sets you up for the next turn to have, a better turn
Mhm.
while also pushing some damage. The 2 block I'm not in love with, but I don't know. I think it's like unlike the Iron Song response. Obviously, this does cost 1. You can still push the damage to like try to win if they don't block with the correct thing. So I kind of like the red. I'm not like super sold on it, but like maybe in Kasai, being able to guarantee that your sword attack's going to go again sounds like a good thing to kind of throw into the deck. I'm not sure. It's a little bit hard to evaluate, but I think it's like a high stale here for me.
Yeah, I think I'm like mid, maybe up to high stale for Agile Engagement because, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, agility tokens are really good for Warrior. One of the main things that you want to do, other than have good attack reactions, is be able to give your weapon attacks go again. That's something that's really, really important to the deck. So even though this one isn't as like flashy as some of the other things, I think it's like fine. Especially for this one, I almost kind of like the blue because you don't have to hit with the attack to get the agility token. You can use it as a resource card, and then you can also sometimes just give +1 if you need to. But yeah, I think like as a resource card, this isn't horrendous because agility tokens are so good. Like weighing it based on how impactful agility tokens are, I think this is like maybe even closer to high stale. I'll move away from mid stale and say that like it's not horrendous. I do think that there are better options, especially like in constructed. I think that like we've sort of seen so far, Warrior has gotten some haymakers so far. But yeah, I don't hate the ability to create agility tokens kind of on demand. Really not so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have another engagement here. What is this one, Bill?
Yes. So this one is Vigorous Engagement, which I would argue is another questionably named card. But yeah, so this is exactly the same as Agile Engagement. It's target warrior attack gets +3 for one resource. It also comes in yellow and blue, so it pumps for 2 and 1 there. Blocks for 2, and if it's defended by an attack action card, you create a Vigor token. I think this one is less impactful than an agility token for the reasons that I already said. Like, obviously, creating Vigor tokens is never bad. You're just banking resources over to your next turn. But with that being said, like, Agile Engagement is kind of a Glint the Quicksilver for next turn, or like a hit and run for next turn. Vigorous Engagement is an Iron Song response that refunds you on the next turn, which is like slightly less impactful. I don't like it quite as much as Agile. I'm probably like more mid, maybe low stale on Vigorous Engagement. The decks still do run pretty low on resources, so being able to bank 1 over turns is great, but I don't think it's as good as getting go again for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm at mid stale for this. I think it's like fine, right? Like, but we have so many great options that perhaps even just block more. I think the thing I get hung up here is just the 2 block, to be honest,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
creating these tokens is very good, but it's just at a cost. Like especially Vigorous Engagement, creating a Vigor, I feel Vigor is good to like give you a bigger turn, but not quite as much as agility. Vigor, to me, I look at Vigor, I'm like, I have the ability now to basically block out and still apply pressure, which is pretty awesome. So I do like the agility a little bit more than the Vigor,
Yeah.
but still decent. Next we have draw swords. What's this, art class? No. Anyway, this is
I was about to make that joke too.
this is a warrior action. Blocks for 3. It comes in all 3 colors, and it costs 3, which is pretty hefty. Your next warrior attack this turn gets +3. Draw a card. Go again. So interesting. You throw a blue into this, maybe try to get something better than the blue is perhaps what the best case scenario is, or just another blue would be the kind of the minimal outcome here.
Refund.
I don't know. There's something about this I like, right? In a way, I don't know. What's it? Steel Sword, the 0 for 3 from Welcome to Wraith. That's
Sharpened steel.
Sharpened steel. So this is a
Yeah,
lot like a weird sharpened steel to me.
yeah.
Um, that being said, I don't know if it's better. It does say warrior attack, which I do like, rather than just warrior weapon attack. Um, I think I'm like high stale here. I think it has some implications, but where sharpened steel is just better is you don't need to have a blue to play it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe in Olympia, because you're going to be playing a lot of blues and you kind of get to see more of your cards, more often. I don't know. I draw swords. Yeah, maybe I'm just like mid stale here.
The thing that I've seen about draw swords that makes me maybe slightly higher on it is actually something that John Flukenbox posted on Twitter. I think it was after the celebrational, when he was like, "Hey, by the way, with Kasai, because this reads draw a card, it makes your weapon attacks free for the turn." So it's a
That's
buff
true.
that then discounts. So it's kind of a 1 cost +3 that cycles a card. Um, yeah, it's like 3 is still a huge cost. Like you were already running what is it? There's one attack uh there's one non-attack action in Warrior that's like thrust or something, and it's a 2 to buff for 3 and it gives it go again inherently, which is like it's good enough to play in like budget builds. I don't know if the upfront cost of 3 is going to make it good enough, but it does have that additional interaction with Kasai that makes it pretty good, in that you kind of get refunded the 2 mana, the 2 resources, like eventually, because you're getting the free attacks. But it is a little bit weird. I think I still am stale on it because 3 is so much, and it's really hard to get past that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's like how often is Kasai going to have the 3? Are you pitching a yellow and a red, to do
Yeah,
it? And then, yeah,
that
but
does not feel worth it.
the synergies are there. But I mean, it's certainly, I mean, it's a limited card to me.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
synergies are awesome there, but I don't think as cool in constructed. Now, this is one of my favorite card names in the set is Edge Ahead.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, we're edge maxing to the max. This is warrior action. This comes in all 3 colors. It's a common. It blocks for 3. It costs 1, and it says your next warrior attack action. No, your next warrior attack this turn gets +3, 2, and 1, based on the colors. When this attacks a hero, you may wager an agility token with them. Go again. So here is your ability to start wagering.
Mhm.
I think this is good. Good stats here. Blocks for 3, and a 1 for 3. In terms of power, I think that agility is really good. I think I like the red and the blue a little bit here for like Olympia. Olympia is like obviously the one that cares the most about wagering, and then you get the ability to get a agility token. Now the cool thing about wagering agility tokens rather than perhaps like clashing them is oftentimes your opponent's going to have to give up cards to try to block this out, and they won't even be able to use the agility that effectively.
Yeah.
So it's a low opportunity cost where you also have extra value off of winning your wager. So I kind of like a low fresh on Edge Ahead. I mean, it could even be bumped up to solid fresh, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. Just sort of echoing the previous things that I've said about agility tokens. Being able to create them in Warrior is like always a good thing. I think that having an agility token at the start of your turn, even if there are some times where you can't necessarily use it, I think you are just always going to want it. Because attacking with your weapon is so like fundamental to the Warrior class, that being able to weave in that extra 2 damage, or if you have specifically buffs that care about weapons, like it makes them online while also being able to weave in some of these warrior attack actions that we'll be seeing relatively soon. So in limited, it is like really good to have agility tokens, and in constructed, I think it's still really good to have agility tokens. Um, this is one of the things I was referencing when I first was talking about the hat, the prized Gallia, that there are a lot of ways to wager up front, and I think this is a really efficient way to do it. It's another 1 for 3, and yeah, it presents your opponent the awkward choice right away, where it's like, hey, you are gonna have to block this weird, and you might not even still be able to prevent all of it because I'm still playing a warrior and I still have cards in my hand. Especially if you have like take the upper hand, your opponent's like, oh well, I'll block this for 6, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna bump it up to 8. And they're like, damn it. um, yeah, I like this a lot. I think this is a solid fresh as well. Just exactly what the deck wants to do. Wants to wager. This is an Olympia card.
Yeah, very much so. Now, what does Engage Swiftblade do?
So engaged Swiftblade is a bit weird. The art shows like a female version of Olympia, so there's even another warrior that we don't really know about. But we have a warrior action that blocks for 3. It comes in all 3 colors and it costs 1. Your next warrior attack this turn gets +3, 2, or 1, and gains. If this is defended by an attack action card, this gets go again. So it gives it the hot streak effect in addition to a buff. This one I like a little bit less than I like hot streak. I think that hot streak, just having that effect at its core, is really impactful. But this being, the opportunity cost of you playing the card and it being just specifically on this next attack, like if this is your only source of go again, then I think your opponent just either goes like no blocks if they have the life total to manage, or they just block it with a non-attack action and equipment, and then you're just kind of sitting there. I don't, when it comes to like go again, I prefer having consistent ways to grant it to attacks. So this feels not as good. I'm not sold on this one. I think I'm like probably stale on Engaged Swiftblade. It seems like it would be really good, but I feel like it just won't line up because it's another card that just gives your opponent the choice.
Yeah, it becomes awkward for your opponent in a way, but also awkward for you in a way, which is like it's a weird stalemate. Now, I do look at these cards and I look at the math on them, right? Like the 1 cost here, and it makes me like upset that the only warrior weapon that we have that costs 2 to attack with is Beaming Blade. So, like I want to get the most value out of my blue sometimes, right? Like obviously you can pitch the blue, engage Swiftblade, attack with a 1 cost weapon, and then still have a resource left over for whether it's the grains or whether it's for an attack reaction. So there is ways to get max value, but I don't think this is the worst. I think if we see a 2 cost weapon at some point, this probably gets a little bit better, right? It just feels like a really good 1 card attack play. But until then, it's probably like high stale. I think it still has some potential. It has this weird thing, if they don't want to block it, they're still taking damage, and if they do want to block it with non-attack actions, they're giving up their non-attack actions. It's tough to say. It's weird that it's making the opponent have weird decisions, like in a warrior way that's not in the reaction phase. It's like, right, we're making these decisions hard first, and now you got to deal with it. Yeah. So I like that they exist, but I don't think it's the best card here. So let's engage Swiftblade. Next we have Hold'em, which is a warrior attack action. No, warrior action, not attack action. Comes in all 3 colors. The common, costs 1, blocks 3. The red here is your next warrior attack this turn gets +3, and when this attacks here, you may wager a Vigor token with them. This is a copy of the agility one, and it has go again, and it's +3, +2, and +1. I rate this probably around the agility one, but just a little bit less. I think that's just where agility is compared to Vigor in my mind. So I think it's another guaranteed way to wager for Olympia, so that's pretty important. So winning this wager, getting you a Vigor and a gold is pretty boss. So I think it's probably still in that mid fresh range to low fresh range. you just want your maximum amount of ways to wager, I think.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the important thing, is specifically for Olympia, is to make sure that you have, not even necessarily like a critical mass to wager every turn, but even to wager every other turn so that you're still getting value out of his effect. I don't think that there are enough cards really to make sure that you can wager every turn. I could be wrong, but like playing Rainbow of Edge Ahead and Hold'em just kind of feels like you're not doing much. Um, so I think you're probably going to want to see if you can wager like once every other turn and still get the value from his hero ability, which this would definitely do. In terms of how excited I am to actually play this card, I'm more excited to play Edge Ahead than I am Hold'em, specific, like exactly for the reason that you said. I think that agility tokens are just better. But this one is not so bad, because instead of like vigorous engagement and agile engagement, this one does interact favorably with Olympia's hero ability. So you're worried less about the specific wager and more just that it is a wager outlet or wager source. So yeah, I think I like this as well. Where would I put this? I mean, probably like high stale, maybe low fresh, because you do want it to be in the deck. I forget exactly where I put Edge Ahead, but yeah, some like one half step lower than Edge Ahead.
Yeah, certainly and I think the blues are probably like the most important, right? I don't know. Like it seems
Yeah.
like Olympia wants a lot of blues, but you heard it here first, folks. Bill wants to edge more than hold 'em. And
I
then our
believe the
last
children refer to that as gooning.
gooning. Sorry. Oh man, we are gooning right now because we are at the last Warriors only card here. It is Goblet of Blood Run Wine. It is a blue 0-cost warrior non-attack action. It blocks 2, and this is a part of the cycle that we saw with the other 2. It says create an agility and a vigor token, go again. I actually like this card. I think creating both of them is quite good, and it sets up for some nice stuff. And you could do stuff after it. I think that's like the nicest thing, and it is a blue for looking at like Olympia specifically. I really think this is a good card for him. That being said, it's probably like a low fresh. I think it's not going to perform like crazy, but it's certainly like a glue kind of card that is going to make you have some bigger turns than you wouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I still like the Guardian one the most because of the internal synergy that it gets. But like we've been saying, agility tokens are great. Vigor tokens, all of the vigor tokens allow you to pay for all of the weapons that we have, at least in limited. And like you were saying, other than what's the 2-cost one? Anyway, the 2-cost weapon. A vigor token will allow you to attack with that, and then the agility token gives it go again. So this essentially is one card allowing you to attack for free with your weapon next turn, leaving you open for attack reactions or for something else. Yeah, and then even if you don't need it to be that, it's also just a blue, so it can let you pay for some of your other stuff. So yeah, I think it's good too. I think it's a solid, like you say, a glue card, something that sort of is foundational to the deck. Not necessarily something super exciting, but something that just makes it run a little bit better. So like, yeah, probably low fresh. I do like it.
Yeah, and that's the warrior pool, like the warrior specific pool. We do have some hybrid cards coming up, and I think warrior's looking really cool. It's a lot of limited cards, a lot of limited synergy, but I'm looking at like Olympia as being like the coolest deck coming out of this, to be honest. As cool as Kasai's ability is, Olympia, I don't know, there's something about wagering and like running a ton of blues that sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, you just the gold is the payoff.
Yeah, the gold is the
And
thing.
again, oh my god, if he got Raisin Army, like if it was just a warrior card, Raisin Army would be absolutely miserable to play against.
Oh, yeah.
It is a good thing that this is a Kasai specialization, because Kasai cannot make as many golds as Olympia can.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's oh man, I don't know. We will see. Now we do have some hybrid cards, but All right, what's this next card now that we're into the hybrids?
So yeah, first hybrid. This is going to be the section of Brute/Guardian hybrid cards. So very interesting. First up, we have a piece of equipment. This is a common equipment. It's gloves. It's the arm piece. It's called Gauntlet of Might, and it has Blade Break 1 and action. Destroy this. Create a Might token. Go again. So I think very clearly a limited card. We have Brute and Guardian gloves that already fit this role, but for limited, just creating yourself a Might token, like both Brute and Guardian, obviously because this is in here, they do care about having Might tokens and they have payoffs for things that are attacking for greater than their base, that sort of thing. I think this is like pretty specifically like a draft piece of equipment, but it's something that you will likely play. There are enough Might synergies that I think are good. I think this is way better. I mean, it's a different equipment slot, but if you're thinking about playing raw meat, just don't and then play this instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like whatever that rating is, like probably a low stale because you will probably play it in limited, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. It's a limited card. We have so many great options, but on its face, it's still not bad, right? I mean, I would have liked it a lot better at Battle Worn, but it's totally fine. Yeah, I mean, yeah, low stale, high rotten, but not because it's bad, just because we just have better options. We're living good out here with the arm slot, but we saw this next card though a while ago. This is one of the first few cards we saw. This is Talk a Big Game. This is a Majestic. It's a Brute Guardian, non-attack action. It is a blue. It costs 0 and it blocks for 3. It says choose a number. The next time you deal that much or more damage to a hero this turn, create that many Might tokens. Go again. So this is an interesting one. I like it, but you gotta be calling your shot, right? You gotta know, you gotta dominate. You gotta know if you have overpower, something like that, or you got to be Reinar and have intimidated their whole hand. I think is pretty much where it is. I mean, there's scenarios, especially in Brute, where you could just so happens you went really wide on maybe Blood Rush Bellow turn, and they committed their whole hand already. You can kind of break up the chain with this, and then guarantee yourself some Might tokens. That's not going to happen that often. All that being said, it's hard to guarantee hitting on this as good as it is when you do. So I got to give it like I don't know. It's like a high stale maybe. Like it's still a blue that blocks 3, but like it's so hard to like really call your shot. And you telegraph any kind of pummel or otherwise shenanigans. So you're just like, I'm just going to say 4. See what happens. It's just like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to make this work, but it's a very fun card. I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious because even though it would never happen, you could like legally just choose the number 90 and just make your opponent like for a split second be like, oh god, I died. But no, like I think it's more intriguing in like I think very specifically Bravo because you have access to specifically dominate on demand, or Reinar, like you said, on the turns that you quad intimidate. And it's like, okay, your opponent they've committed their equipment or whatever, and they don't have any cards in hand, and you're like, okay, well, I have like an Alpha Rampage or the side graded Alpha Rampage. And you're like, I'm just gonna choose like just to be safe, I'll choose 6, and then you just like come in for 6. Or you come in for 9, you make 6 tokens, and then you crunch them again next turn. I think this sort of fits in the same slot as like Cast Bones, the Brute Majestic, that you reveal the top 6 cards of your deck, and then you get Might tokens. Yeah, I don't know about this one. It's another card like we were kind of mentioning with all of the warrior defended by an attack action card deals, that it sort of puts too much of the decision in the hands of your opponent, unless you're able to remove all of their options. And I just don't feel like that's every single turn. So Yeah, probably like pretty stale on this. It's fun. The art's great.
Yeah.
Guy, I wanna be that guy, man.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes I feel like that guy. My God. What does the next card do though?
This is maybe the most like on the nose card name that I've seen ever. This is Clash of Might. It is a brute/guardian attack. This is a rare, so it comes in a cycle of all 3 colors. Costs 2, attacks for 6, 5, and 4, and then blocks for 3. Yet another brute card that blocks. Crazy. And when this defends, you clash with the attacking hero, and the winner creates a might token. So it is literally a clash of might. Um, I don't know. It's a vanilla 2 for 6 at red. That gives you the option to clash on defense. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel this. I'm not in on it. Might tokens are good, but the fact that this is a whole attack that you have to worry about, I feel like this was created to smooth out either like the limited or sealed experience. This does not feel like a constructed card to me necessarily. It feels like something that would be included in like the classic battles Rhinar v Darthia deck. So pretty low stale, maybe high rotten even, unless I'm really undervaluing this card. But it just feels like you could do so much better for 2 for 6s, even in this set.
Yeah, this is a limited card. It has to be. I mean, there's so many 2 for 6s that block 3 at this point that there's no way this is finding a spot. Sure, I guess into like Dorinthia or something like that, you can just win a bunch of clashes and get some free mites off this card. But even then, it's really not that great. You know,
Yeah.
It's totally fine. I mean, it's fine, but yeah. So
Yeah,
like,
it's not a bad card. It's just not
Yeah.
exciting.
yeah, a low stale, limited card here. Next we have battered, not broken. Um, did they get this one from Tumblr? This is a rare, but only comes in 1 color. It comes in red. It costs 0. It's a Brute Guardian instant. The next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent 2 of that damage if you do create a might token. It's a modal block 2 with a little bit of upside on the might token. This is a limited card to me. I'm going to say low stale. I can't really see this being good enough to really make the cut, even into like something where, like, I mean, I guess like it's a 1 card Arcane 2 into.
Mhm.
I don't know. Even then, like you just play yellow. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
like
You play like a yellow 6 in KO.
yeah. So like I'm not a fan of this. I mean, it's really cool and limited because there's a lot of neat stuff you can do, get around overpower and like being intimidated, you can place in response and still get some really cool value, but for constructed, I'm not really loving this.
Yeah, I'm the same. The closest to good value that you could get from this is by blocking arcane damage. Um, Other than that, like you just prefer to play a card that blocks more than that. Like even the previous card, like Clash of Might, it blocks 3 and can also make a might token. Um, you know, I'm not feeling it. Outside of like non-physical damage, and even then, like you're saying, you just play a blue or
Yeah.
a yellow, even at the very worst. So yeah, not feeling it. Pretty low. Probably rotten, honestly. I'm not feeling this card.
Yeah. That's fair. Maybe
Yeah.
it is broken, not better. What does Test of Might do?
So Test of Might is another block card. This is a Brute Guardian block. Blocks for 4, and it's a red. And when this defends, clash with the attacking hero, the winner creates a might token. So very, very simple effect. It's basically just Clash of Might, but on a non-attack card that blocks for 1 more. I I don't know. I still have a really tough time just valuing blocks in general. Um, the winner creating a might token is like fine. I just think that it's you're giving up the opportunity to play something that you could discard to a beat chest to block for one more. And I just don't think that's like a worthwhile payoff. Obviously, this is also a Guardian card, but like thinking of Guardian stuff, you can block better with Guardian in general. So yeah, I'm not feeling this one either. Again, it might be just because I'm prejudiced against block cards, but I think I'm like pretty low stale on this one. Might tokens are still fine, but I just don't like block cards.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher, but not much. I think it is one of the less exciting block clashes that we have. It works in fine in the realm of just the limited sphere, especially of the set, and maybe it has some like synergies with Victor Goldmane, but even then you get the +1. I mean, sure, you give a hammer a little bit of extra juice or something else. Not like thrilled with Test of Might, but it is. I think it's fine if you need the blocks, but like, you know, if it's a wizard meta, it's like when can you ever commit this card into your deck? Like it's so hard to like give up a whole slot where you're gonna just have to pull it out against some things. So, not super high on it. Probably like a stale on Test of Might, maybe low stale. Next we have Wall of Meat and Muscle. Love the name. This is another block though. It blocks for 3. It's a brute and guardian block. It's a rare. Only comes in red. When this defends, if you control a might token, you may put an attack action card from your graveyard on top of your deck. Not huge into this one. You need to have the might. It's really cool and limited. You got some cool synergies. Like, yeah, I got a might because whatever, I won a clash or I beat somebody's wager or something like that. And now I'm getting this. And I get to kind of recycle a card, which is a really powerful effect. But KO is getting mites on a pretty consistent level because of his ability. But like, KO doesn't want to play this card, I don't think.
No.
So I think this is pretty rotten, to be honest. I mean, I want it to be good. It sounds like I love recursion, but I don't think it's good enough.
That was honestly my first thought too, was like, oh, recursion is great. Like this card might be good. But yeah, like it blocks for 3. You need to control the might token at the time of defending as well. Like if it was like when the combat chain closes or something, it would be interesting because then if you blocked with this and it helped you to win a wager that your opponent was attacking you with, then like at the time of the resolution of the chain, you could get the might token and then recur a thing. But yeah, the fact that this blocks for 3, the fact that you need the might token right away, like you're saying in KO is probably the most consistent might tokens you're going to be getting for brute, and if you're not playing a 6 attack card, it has to be really good, and I don't think that this is that. So yeah, pretty rotten as well.
Now, funny enough, paired with this next card, it's pretty insane. But what is the next card?
So yeah, next card up is Mighty Wind Up. It's we're now into the commons. This is a Brute Guardian attack action. They block for 2, cost 3, and attack for 7, 6, and 5. So like a 3 for 7, not horrendous. And it has a very, very simple line of text. Instant discard this. Create a might token. So this is just an on-demand might token. I think it definitely is there to fill some gaps in a limited environment, with the payoffs like Wall of Meat and Muscle potentially. You can also, like, if you have this in your hand going into your turn and you prefer to have the might token as opposed to the 3 for 7, then at the end of your opponent's turn, you can discard it to go in with a might token. But yeah, I feel like this is just there to sort of smooth out some draws in limited. It's not the 3 for 7 or even like a 3 for 6 is like not bad. This also in KO for limited purposes counts as a 3 blue 6 because the blue is a 5. But yeah, I don't know. It blocks for 2, which is pretty rough, and just creating a might token is medium. So I think this is like a limited stale. I think this is like going to be something that maybe holds your deck together in some capacity. But it is not an exciting card.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, Bill. I think
Oh,
this is an
here we
exciting.
go.
I mean, there is another one of this card in a cycle that is more exciting, but this is also exciting because we're seeing it first here. Rhinar gets a free Intimidate off this. KO gets a free extra might. Levia gets to just create a might and start filling the graveyard with probably the yellow, but you can also play the red. And then in KO, you're just playing like the blues and just kind of off to the races. You could do it at instant speed. So turn 0, you can create mites to start your first turn with some mites. And then also actually with that last card, you can block with this instant speed, mighty wind up, create the might, return that back to your top of your deck, which is pretty cool. That's more of a limited thing. I just want to say that's a fun interaction. I think these, I mean, I'm not even looking at these for Guardian. I think in Brute, some form of these are going to be playable. Just free intimidates on Rhinar plus a might token, I think is just good enough. And we're going to see another one as we get closer to the end that is even more insane. These are insane turn 0 or turn 1 plays because you get to just set up for your first turn with some really good gas. So I don't know, man. These are quite good.
No, I just totally blanked because every time I think about Rhinar discarding, I know in my head that it's not whenever you randomly discard. I know that it's when you discard. But for some reason, it just didn't click that like, oh, discard this. That triggers Rhinar. That's crazy. That's actually so cool. Damn. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm higher on this card now. This card's cool.
Yeah, I think it's like a solid fresh. I don't think this one is as high as the next one we see, but but it is quite good. I think the blues are auto includes in KO because there's still blue sixes that can also create 2 might tokens, and you can do
2 might tokens is a great rate.
yeah, which is pretty nuts. And at the floor, I mean, at the floor you could block for 2, whatever. Or you could just attack for 7, 6, or 5, which is not that bad either. And Levia also really loves these cards, more so the next one we see, but pretty cool. The next card, though, is Rising Power, which is another Brute Guardian card, which is a common, comes in all 3 colors. It's a 6 attack, 2 defense at the red. It costs 2. So it comes in 5 and 4 as well. If you've drawn a card this turn, this gets +1. I will say this is a limited card. Pop a gold, get some action, maybe play a Wild Ride into this. You get a little extra juice. You know, it's totally fine. I look at this as limited. This is like low stale for constructed. Maybe regular stale for constructed. There's still some stuff that works. I mean, at the yellow, at least it's a 6 for KO. But that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if you've drawn a card this turn, I feel like is going to be tougher for Brute and Guardian generally. They don't tend to draw cards on their own turn. Even with some of the stuff that we have, like even with the gold tokens, I guess like Victor can draw cards on his own turn pretty reliably, but
Brute does it pretty often with the draw discard, but
that's true too.
But even then, like a 2 for 7 is a good rate, but like I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure either. Yeah, probably around stale as well. You can tell I'm not a very consistent Brute player. I just keep forgetting about all these interactions.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I mean, it's a fine card. Yeah, we'll just stale. It's going to be I think it's going to be like a nice glue card in limited, but this is constructed only. Now, what does Wage Might do?
Wage Might, another very on-the-nose card. This is a Brute Guardian attack. It costs 3, comes in all 3 colors, and attacks for 7, 6, and 5. Blocks for 2. And when this attacks a hero, you may wager a Might token with them. Wage Might. I would say this one is probably like going to be more... I could see this as just being like a card that you play to fill out the deck list in like Betsy. because again, it's just a consistent this wagers. So this could be 2 cards. You pay for this and then for Betsy's ability with maybe 1 floating or whatever, to give it +1 and overpower, and then also wager a might token. Like, not exciting, not bad. Even the yellow I think is fine because it bumps it up to to 7, which is like a pretty decent one. Maybe even the blue. I think if you want to play this, you'd probably play the blue because it goes up to 6 with overpower, so it's still pretty awkward for your opponent to block. Yeah, I don't see this in brutes necessarily. I do see it in Betsy, but I think that's about it. I mean, it is a common. I think it's there for limited purposes. It's not bad. Like, recurring sources of wager, I think, are just good, especially in this set. So I think this is probably just something that fills out the deck list. So yeah, probably like I would say honestly like a high stale for the blue. I'm actually like not super out on wagering just in general.
Yeah, I could see that. I think they're totally fine. Might is the weakest of them. We're gonna see an agility one. I think that one's gonna be really exciting.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
for the purposes of this, I mean, you do have to commit cards. I think might is one of the easier ones for your opponent to block out and still get value out of. So
Mhm.
that like kind of dings it here for me. I think it's probably a stale. But if you're looking for ways to wager, although I mean I'm more interested in ways for warrior to wager right now. But I think it's still fine. The stats are there. It's just a matter if there's any room for a 2 block in these decks. So yeah, wage might on the nose. They're killing it with the names. They're either really dirty or exactly what they do.
Yeah.
Now next we have lead with power. This is a Brute Guardian non-attack action. Comes in all 3 colors. It's a common. Blocks for 2. It costs 1. The red is your next Brute or Guardian attack this turn gets +3 and create a Might token. And then also says go again. And then it's +2 and 1. 1 for 3 plus a 1 on the next turn is not the worst. I don't think I love it in Guardian, to be honest. I think Guardian has more efficient things to be doing. Brute is not that bad, right? You know, you pitch like a blue, you get +3, and then you go into like a 2 for 6, you get 2 for 9. All that being said, it's a 2 block. I don't know. I think there are just better options. I'd rather be playing a barraging beatdown or something like that. And for that reason, I think this is like a stale. Like I think the stats are fine. It's just not exactly what I want to be doing. But the might token next turn is totally fine. So that's why I'm going to give it a stale.
Yeah, I think I'm about the same. The thing that sort of saves this for me is that it's just Brute or Guardian attack and not attack action card.
Mm-hmm.
So it still works on weapons, but even
Sure.
then, like you're saying, like this is most of the time this is just a come to fight with a might token stapled to it. Which like come to fight is a great limited card. I know that. Like it's totally reasonable and limited, and I think this will also be really reasonable and limited, especially with the might token synergies that we get with a lot of the cards that are in the set. But I don't think that's going to be impactful enough in constructed for it to really make a difference. Like you're saying, I think barraging beatdown is just a better buff, like pretty much every time in brute, and in guardian you get things like tear asunder, um, which you pay 2 more for, but it gives dominate and absolutely abhorrent on hit. So um, yeah, I don't know. In limited, I think this card's fine,
Yeah.
but in constructed, I don't see it making very many waves. So
Yeah.
probably pretty stale, maybe low stale even.
Yeah.
Um,
Even thinking about like Bonebreaker Bellow, which we saw earlier, or,
yeah.
you know, that
Yeah,
in
the beat
Rhinar
chest
is,
one.
yeah. That one's giving an Intimidate or a Might token for KO, like whether, you know, depending on which Brute hero you're playing. So, like, that's just way more value. So, lead with power, yeah, probably like still. So, that's the Brute Guardian hybrid stuff. A lot of I think probably the hybrid stuff's gonna be a lot of like limited, kind of bread and butter stuff. Kind of fill out the drafts and stuff like that. Make some really interesting choices for, well, do I just stay open and pick the lead with power or whatever? And it's not as useful for constructed, but still some cool stuff.
Definitely. They're just like kind of playing with the space too, of being like, what do we do that overlaps Brute and Guardian? And I think the cycles that they did with like what classes care about what tokens really makes that pretty easy. Like every single one that we saw here just creates a might token because that's the one that the two classes have in common. And then spoilers, but the next one is Brute and Warrior, and they care about agility tokens. So all of those make or worry about agility tokens. So I think that's a really nice way to sort of tie them together and have a card that makes one type of token but have it fit in both classes. I think that's a good way that they've approached this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Boom, costume change. We are at Flat Trackers, folks. We are at the Brute Warrior equipment and so on and so forth, the hybrid cards for Brute and Warrior. And the first one we have here is pretty interesting. It is Flat Trackers, as I said. It is the leg piece at common for Brute Warrior. And it has Blade Break and 1 defense. And it has 1 action that says, destroy this, create an agility token, go again. So, this one is pretty interesting. It's maybe better in Warrior than Brute because Brute does have some great options at the foot leg piece slot, I guess. Like, yeah. and like Scab Skin's obviously great. It's not very like the most reliable to get the extra action points, but you have beaten trackers, which kind of works with, I think that's what they're called, beaten trackers that when you discard something at random, you can pop them to get an action point. This is easier for setting up a turn, and it doesn't really cost you an action because it has go again. So I don't love that it's Blade Break because you only get the 1 defense or the agility token. So I'm probably around stale on it just because of the better options out there. Even for Warrior has better options, but it can be something for some guaranteed go again. Now, agility tokens are great, but it also telegraphs your next turn big time. So that's where I'm at with Flat Trackers.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I just sort of came across as I was thinking about it while you were going through your points. I do like these as like a budget option for feat. Like agility tokens, give and go again is like pretty powerful. Obviously, we have Snapdragon Scalers as like a mainstay of a lot of aggressive decks. This is obviously like a turn slower than Snapdragon Scalers, but it isn't. It doesn't have to be for. What am I trying to say? It works on any attack, not just ones that cost 1 or less. Whereas Snapdragons is just for small attacks. This could be for any attack. It could be for a weapon attack. So it does have a lot of versatility there. Yeah, I actually don't hate this as a piece of budget equipment, even in constructed formats. If this is an effect that you really need, especially in Brute and Warrior, if you're giving go again to your big attacks, you're probably doing something pretty crazy. So yeah, I think I'm maybe a little bit higher still in stale, probably high stale. But I'm kind of surprised with how much I like these. I think these could have afforded to have Battle Worn. I don't think, especially on pieces of equipment like this, I feel like Battle Worn isn't as much of a design mistake. So yeah, I don't know. I can see why they did it, but I think this could have had Battle Worn and still been fine.
Yeah, probably would have been too good for limited, and that probably is the only reason it doesn't have Battle Worn. If this was a supplemental set, I think it almost guaranteed had Battle Worn because it's on par with something like Beaten Trackers. Now, what does the next card do?
So the next card we've known about for a while, but it is still a fun one, and I'm excited to talk about it. It's Runner. This is a majestic Brute Warrior action. It's an attack. It comes in red. It costs 2, attacks for 6, and blocks for 3. Another Brute card that blocks, probably because it's a Warrior card. And when this attacks, if it has go again, you create an agility token. So if you've already given this go again with an agility token or with some other source, then it allows you to it refunds you that agility token for the next turn. So kind of a like a pretty simple effect, all things considered. But looking at this in context, like it's a 6, so you can play it in brute and not feel too bad about it. If you wanted to attack with this instead of your weapon in warrior, it gives you something that you can potentially do next turn. Like we were just saying, like agility tokens are pretty good. So I don't hate this card. I don't know exactly where it fits because it feels like it's more of a brute card than it is a warrior card. I could be wrong because there's obviously a lot of switch up with the paradigm of warrior having attack action cards that matter now. I mean, Bolton, I know, but non-light warrior attack actions. So it's a little bit weird. I don't hate it, but I don't love it really outside of brute. I do like it in brute because it allows you to have multiple sort of impactful turns in a row. Yeah, I don't know. This one's kind of weird. I thought I was going to come up with a rating scale for this one as I was talking, and I'm still kind of missing it. I think I'm like low fresh. I do like it. It's still a 6, so at the very bare minimum in brute, it's still something that discards to effect, but and it blocks for 3, which is something that brute cards basically never do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for brute, I can't really see the. I mean, you can play this in warrior, and I think it's fine. I don't really know if warrior's doing any of this right now. I mean, if there's a lot of agility creation in a warrior deck, I think this is a pretty good popper to throw in your deck anyway. With like if you're creating the agility tokens anyway, to start off with a 6 and then set up for your next turn, I do like it. In brute, I do think it's quite good, especially if you're running a card that we haven't talked about yet. But if you're creating agility tokens in brute, which is the best way to kind of give runner go again, then you get to set up for better turns. And, it might not even feel the worst if you can't. If like runner has go again, you create the agility token, then you can't do something else. But you still kind of just kicked it down the road to the next turn, and you still presented a 6. And it only costs 2, and it blocks 3, and it has 6. I think it's just like a really solid card. It's nothing flashy in a lot of ways. You will see it do some pretty insane things, that kind of you don't even see on its surface. But I would give it like a solid fresh, but could go up to a higher fresh if you're running a lot of agility token generation. But it's a really interesting card.
Yeah, something that I actually do like about this. They have printed several majestic 2 for 6s, but most of them recently have blocked for 2, and this one blocks for 3. So this is like as close to Command and Conquer like that you're gonna get in terms of just like a stat line. Its effect is obviously not nearly as impactful, but it is still pretty good. I think, like you're saying, you're even just delaying your agility token. So,
hey, the agility token that it creates could work with the CNC that you play the next turn. How about that? There you go.
I'm vomiting right now.
Next, we have a cycle of rares. We also saw one of these cycles in the Brute Guardian stuff as well. This is Clash of Agility. It is a 2 for 6 with 3 block, and then has 5 and 4 on the attack for the yellow and blue. It says, this is the red, when this defends, clash with the attacking hero, the winner creates an agility token. So this is tough. I don't really love a lot of the non-Guardian clash stuff, to be honest. This is the most, maybe one of the more powerful payoffs at this cycle, where you get the agility token. Like if you can just commit one card, win a clash, and get an agility token for your next turn, that's awesome. But that being said, there's so many matchups where, well, one, it could either just be, your clash could be a blank if you're running into the mirror on like the brute mirror. And then you're just losing to guardians, right? And that is tough. I think there's going to be a lot of guardians running around. So like that's a real cost to play these clash cards in non-guardian decks. So that being said, the payoff is good. I can't really see Warrior playing this one either. I mean, they really have to be all in on playing attack actions if that's the case. And I see this as a limited card mostly, so I'm going to give it like a stale based on how many Guardians are in the meta. It could go down to rotten, to be honest, but that's where I'm at with Clash of Agility.
Yeah, I'm right in that camp too. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't want to play this in like a constructed format if you're playing a warrior deck outside of Bolton, but even in Bolton, like you're running so many of the light warrior attack actions that charge that are like for 1 or 2 or 3. So like most of the time in warrior, you're revealing like an attack reaction or stuff because you're still going to be running those. You're still a warrior deck. You want to run around the reaction phase. So yeah, this does not feel like a warrior card, or at least a card that you want to play in a warrior deck. In brute, I think it makes a little more sense, but like the fact that it's a 2 for 6 that at red, so you can really only play like the yellow in KO if you're really pushing for this sort of thing. I don't know that it does enough. So yeah, I think I'm probably in that sort of low stale area. In Warrior, I think this is rotten. I think it's a trap. Don't play Clash in Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense within the parameters of the set in limited.
Within like limited, and yeah, it makes sense. Like play it if it's a playable card, but I don't think that you're gonna win a lot of clashes if you're playing this in a constructed Warrior deck.
No, certainly not. I mean, the winning the Clash is huge, but you got to be able to win the Clash. That's where it comes down to.
Yeah, don't just give your opponent an agility token.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not great either because they get a whole turn to decide whether they're going to want to try and use it. What is the next card here, which is a rare?
So the next one is another questionably named card, but take it on the chin, baby. It's the Brute Warrior Instant. It costs 0 and it only comes in one color. It comes in red. And it's the next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent 2 of that damage. If you do, you create an agility token. So basically just an arcane barrier 2, or it works for any type of damage, but that's kind of the effect that you're looking at, just to prevent 2. If you do end up preventing damage, you create an agility token, which is like not a bad payoff. Just 0 or like an entire slot on a red card that only prevents 2 damage doesn't feel great. It feels pretty below rate, especially when people are like already not playing Fate Foreseen. You have something like Oasis Respite, which prevents 4 for 1 more resource, and then also gains a life if you're behind. So you're really trying to leverage that, the like prevent 4 plus 1 health for 1 resource, versus this doesn't cost anything, only prevents 2, but it makes you an agility token. And as we were saying, agility tokens are really good. I just don't know if it's that good. I think I would rather play like a yellow of anything, or a blue if you're worried about arcane damage, because it'll prevent up to 3. I don't know. This just feels like a very, very narrow sort of thing. It does prevent any type of damage, which we've seen is really useful. But again, you're up against Oasis Respite, and that's a tough spot to be in. So I'm not feeling this one. Unless I'm missing something, I'm going to put this one probably in like stale, maybe even low stale. Again, just kind of feels like a trap. I think there are easier ways to create agility tokens than dedicating a slot to this in a constructed deck.
Yeah, it feels weird to kind of commit to a red defensive only card just to create an agility token. Like we just saw that Clash cycle where that at least can attack for 6 if you're not defending with it. And yeah, this is just like a tough. Then you made a great point. Like just play a blue. This is like it will effectively do a lot of the same stuff, even if you're on Skullhorn or something like that. And looking at Warrior. I don't think Warrior really wants this at all either. So, we're not going to be taking this one on the chin. But if we did, we might run into trouble. The next card is Run Into Trouble, which is another rare that is, Bill's favorite card type, a Brute Warrior block. It is a red. When this defends, if you control an agility token, deal 1 damage to the attacking hero. This is a limited card. Even if you were creating agility tokens enough to make this work, it's a red. It's not. It's a block. which is, has its downsides. This works great within limited, but it's going to be a rotten for constructed, to be honest.
Yep. Dealing 1 damage on block has been really good. Like we've seen that with I always forget the name of the brute one. Is it Reckless Swing?
Reckless Swing, and then
Yes.
Riptide's
And
Traps.
Steelblade Shunt and Riptide's Traps. Like we've seen dealing damage on block be very effective. But again, this is a red that only does one thing, and if if its ability doesn't happen, if it's not like lined up with the agility token right there for you to deal that 1 extra damage, then this is just so below rate. It just doesn't do anything. It's super limited. It could win a game in limited. I mean, we've seen Steelblade Shunt win games time and time again. That 1 damage is crazy, man. But yeah, I don't know. Again, this is another instance of this is a block card, and I'm already pretty prejudiced against it. But thankfully, it's not very good, so it makes that easy.
Well, guess what? We got another one for you, Bill. What is Test of Agility?
Hell yeah. Okay, so we got Test of Agility. This is another Brute Warrior block. This one's a red. It does block for 4 though, so we're already +1 block. We're in Fate Foreseen territory. This is when this defends clash with the attacking hero, the winner creates an agility token. So similar to the Clash of Agility, it blocks for 1 more, but doesn't have the attack sort of variable. I don't hate this one as much as I hate Run Into Trouble. I think that, like we've been saying up to this point, we're going to be talking about this point repeatedly, but agility tokens are really good. They're a good token. They're good to have. This one feels less bad to play in like a brute deck. I think it's still, again, Warrior Clash feels like a trap. In anything other than limited, it's a trap. So I'm not evaluating it on the Warrior side like at all. But for brute, this helps against overpower, which is going to be pretty plentiful, I think, moving forward. It does block for 4, which is a pretty decent stat line for block cards, all things considered. I'm still not super high on it, but I am higher than I am on Run Into Trouble. So I think this one's probably like a mid, maybe high stale for brute. It's again like just trying to give it as many benefits of the doubt as I can. I don't hate it. I think agility tokens are really good, and being able to create them with somewhat like some amount of consistency while not feeling like you're taking off too much from the top, like from Take It on the Chin. Like this blocks 2 extra damage on top of that, and it helps against overpower. So I think that's really good. I think that's not like insanely good, but I think it's better.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I try to think of what kind of deck I'm going to play it in, and it's certainly not a Warrior deck, not in Constructed. In Brute, maybe a KO deck that is playing a mid-range control game, right? KO buffing your cards that you're clashing with is pretty huge, right? And kind of is the
That's
advantage.
true.
Is the advantage that it might have into other brutes. It's still tough into Guardians, and the blocks can be quite good into Guardians. But if we see like a ninja meta, I mean, this is pretty good, right? You can just commit 1 test of agility to create an agility token, and then have blocked 4, maybe prevented a Mask of Momentum trigger, and then had a nice wide turn on your turn as well. So I kind of like that. That being said, it's probably like a high stale at the ceiling currently, but if the meta shook out to a point where Test of Agility would do some serious work, it could get into the low fresh range. But I kind of like these 4 blocks.
Yeah, 4 block is, I think, the very bare minimum for what a block should do before you consider it, unless it does something obscene.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. But the next card is even more interesting, and I think we're going to see a lot of this card in the coming months. This is Agile Windup. This is a common. It comes in all 3 colors. It is a 3 cost, 7 attack, 2 block, Brute Warrior attack action, and it has 1 ability. It says instant, discard this, create an agility token. I'm going to look at the yellow here, which comes at 6 instead of 7. This is a auto include into most brute decks now. This is just insane. Think about the value that you create in each individual brute, right? You think about Rhinar. That is giving you an agility token plus an intimidate, plus turning on your claws. In Levia, you're getting an agility token, turning on your claws, and filling up your graveyard. KO, you're creating a might and an agility token. Like, this is just doing it on so many levels. And like, KO can play all 3 colors and will most likely play at least the blues and yellows, I think. So it is an insane card. I mean, this is the common that is going to be the fresh to death common of the set. I mean, if I saw one, this is it, because this is pretty insane. What do you think, Bill?
I sort of paid my dues, I think, with the might discarder, and so as soon as you mentioned that, like, you went through your sort of your train of thought there, and then referenced that there was like there were ones for the other tokens as well. I've been thinking about it basically ever since. And yeah, looking at these again now, like the fact that the blue one is a 6 in KO that does 2 things and is still a 6. This card's crazy. Like, this is one of the things that I think is kind of interesting about the design of this set. And I've been singing its praises a lot. But one thing that I have seen Flesh and Blood do pretty consistently is treat its tokens with equal weight in terms of their value. And like comparing this to like discard this, create an agility token, to discard this, create a might token, the other one, mighty wind up, I believe. Yeah. It's kind of night and day, although like the might tokens are very useful especially in like a late game situation in a lot of, in any format really. Just getting that extra amount to go over the top is really good. But like on average, agility tokens are insane. And like might tokens have the possibility of being like pretty good. So the fact that this is the same stat line for a much better token, in my opinion, I think is wild. This is an easy fresh to death. Like, this is a new paradigm for brute commons, honestly. Like, this is going to be seen in pretty much every deck.
Yeah.
They made it a 3 for 7 at red, and it's not even necessary. Like, you just run them as resource cards that also do other stuff. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, they're really good. And like, the token comparison is real, but you know, when I think about it, I think the floor is higher on might tokens and the ceiling is higher on agility tokens, right?
That's very true.
You know, if you are in a situation where you need to block, at least the might token you can kind of use on your weapon or whatever. While if you need to block, the agility token might just like kind of go away. So, you know, awesome design and pretty insane. Yeah. What does Rising Speed do?
So Rising Speed is another set of commons, rainbow commons, Brute Warrior attack actions. They cost 2, attack for 5, 4, and 3 across the cycle, and block for 2. And they read, if you've drawn a card this turn, this gets go again. So there are a few ways to trigger this in both Brute and Warrior. Obviously, within the set, we have gold tokens. With Brute, we have the draw discard cards. With Warrior, we have, at the very least, there's draw swords. But outside of that, I'm kind of blanking on other options within Warrior. This, again, kind of feels like more of a Brute card, if it is one. I think this is more for limited, though, because it's like just a 2 for 5 that sometimes has go again. In limited, I can see this being like an annoying card to face down, but realistically, even if you're looking at this from like a resource card perspective, the blue attacks for 3 and it costs 2. Like, that's a pretty bad rate, even if it does have go again. So yeah, I think this is a limited card. I'm not sure what else to say about it. I think this is pretty low stale, maybe high rotten in terms of card quality and economy. Just doesn't feel like it does nearly as much as Agile Windup does.
Yeah, certainly. I will say I'm a little bit higher on it, and a couple of reasons. I like a world where the red is played in KO, because it is a 6, you know, in hand and everywhere else. You wild ride into this, you're cooking with gas. And then also Olympia is creating gold tokens. I don't know if this is what Olympia wants to do. It's certainly what they signal for draft or limited. Oh, yeah. But in constructed, it remains to be seen. A 2 for 5 would go again. It's not the worst. You're not going to have a shortage of resources in that deck, so I could see it being a real thing. But that's it's still tough. It's probably like mid stale for me, but there are some upsides there for sure. Next we do have Wage Agility, a wager card, which if you, I mean, it's what it does is the name. It comes in all three colors. It's a common, and it comes in 7 attack, 6 attack, and 5 attack, and all 2 block. It's a brute warrior attack action. When this attacks a hero, you may wager an agility token with them. I think this is good. I think at the red, I mean, like, it's fine. Like, the stats are good, right? Coming in at the red, waging an agility token, they're committing 3 cards, usually, to prevent this from happening. And then, even if they get the agility token, what are they going to do with it, right? So,
yeah,
it presents a really interesting decision for your opponent. And I like it. I still don't know if it's good enough. 2 block is scaring me off this card, and the 3 cost for sure. So that being said, like, I think it's probably in the stale range, but it is one of the wager cards that you're gonna get value whether they decide to block it or not.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing to think about too with the wager cards. Like, this is for them to get the token off of the wager, especially the red, like you were saying. Like, they need to commit 3 cards, or 2 cards plus an equipment or 2. Especially if this eats like a might token, then they probably have to do 2 equipment or 3 cards, and like, then what's their crackback? If they do get an agility token, like you were kind of saying previously when I was talking about sort of the weight of these tokens, this feels much better for them to potentially get, as long as, like, if they've sort of committed a bunch of cards into blocking this, because then it just disappears and nothing happens. So yeah, I do like that prospect of it as well. And like, the 3 for 7 is certainly not bad. Wager makes a lot more sense as a brute warrior card, so I could actually technically see this in warrior if they really needed something. Like, especially the red can be a popper, even against the auras that give defending cards -1 attack, like that sort of thing. Like, being 7 puts it into that range of being an effective popper even against interaction. So yeah, I don't hate it. I don't think it's spectacular either, but I do think it's worth thinking about. So yeah, I think this is probably like mid stale. I'm not upset about it. I'm not excited, but I'm not upset. It is a card. It is one of the cards of all time.
It is definitely a card. I will actually, now that I thought about it, this is my downfall all the time. I get in brute brain. I was thinking about brute stuff, and I'm like, this can't, this is fine in brute, but it's not that good. It's pretty relevant for Olympia, right? Because Olympia cares about winning wagers and creating wagers. So I do think that you could probably bring it up to like a high stale, maybe even low fresh for Olympia, right? Because if you win this wager, and you should have tricks in the deck, you get a gold and an agility, and then you're really cooking with gas. So no more brute brain. It definitely feels a little bit better for warriors. So, but certainly a cool card. What does Lead with Speed do?
So this one actually is interesting. I've been kind of looking at this one as it comes up on the list, and I'm excited to talk about it a little bit because it is a brute warrior action. It costs 1 and comes in all 3 colors. Blocks for 2 across all 3, and your next brute or warrior attack this turn gets +3, or +2, or +1, and then it creates an agility token, and this has go again. I actually don't hate this as a buff. It's kind of like it's a come to fight at the baseline. It's a 1 to buff by 3, 2, or 1, and then creating an agility token to set you up for your next turn is like genuinely not bad. I kind of like this card, even just as like at the blue, because the agility token maintains its value across all 3 colors. I don't really hate this card. You're probably going to want to see the red more than the blue, because a +3 buff is just that much more impactful. But yeah, I actually I actually kind of like this one. I think this is maybe at its minimum a high stale, like maybe almost a low fresh. Like this is an easy way to make agility tokens.
Yeah, I like the blue here, right? Like I think the value is certainly there with the other two colors, but the blue is doing, the buff, like a little bit of a buff can put your 6 to a 7, and that's a break point, whatever. But the blue is still creating the agility token, and I think that's the most important thing here. And it's good enough. I think like high stale. Like I think we still have a lot of better options on blues, but like if you're just like, you know what, I want to make sure I'm getting wide every turn, I think that lead with speed is going to be a great option. But that's the Brute Warrior stuff. It's pretty interesting, some draft stuff there, but also like some real bangers. And that leads us to our last hybrid class group here, which is Guardian Warrior. Should be interesting. And the first one is Vigor Girth, which is such a wonderful name. And it is a Guardian Warrior equipment chess piece, much like the other two that we saw. It has blade break, it blocks for 1. And this one says, action, destroy this, create a Vigor token, go again. This is fine. Create 1 resource at your chest piece, I think is okay. I think I forget what the other one was. The other
Blossom
common.
Spring?
Yeah, Blossom of Spring. I think that's probably just better. You get it when you need it. And I think for that reason, this is just a rotten constructed card, and mostly, I mean, it's fine, but like, I don't know. You have so many better options at the chess slot. It's totally fine and limited though.
Yeah, I think this is a limited card. It just works for the only reason you would play this over Blossom of Spring is if you really need the interaction with Vigor tokens. Outside of that, Blossom of Spring gets you the resource right away, and I think that's better instead of having to like guess, oh, next turn I think I'll need it. Because obviously, like, you draw your cards at the end of the turn, so you don't know what your hand's actually going to look like next turn. So, playing into it that way is not going to pay out for you nearly as often as just having the resource right now. So, yeah, pretty rotten. Constructed fine, constructed not fine. Limited maybe fine.
We do have a Majestic though. What is it?
So this card review is sponsored by KFC. Because this is Double Down. We're not actually sponsored, KFC. Don't get at me. So this is
they tuned
one
out
that
a long time ago, Bill. KFC they couldn't handle it.
They couldn't possibly handle the spiciness. But anyway, so Double Down. We've known about this one for a long time, so we've had a lot of time to sort of mull it over, to chew the fat, as it were. This is a Guardian Warrior action. That blocks for 3. It's a Majestic, so it only comes in red, and it costs 2. But you may destroy a gold you control rather than pay Double Down's resource cost. So it's either 2 resources or 1 gold. The next attack that wagers this turn gets +3 and overpower. And if a hero would create 1 or more tokens from a wager this turn, instead they create that many +1 of each of those tokens. Go again. So one of the most insane effects that I've seen. It's obviously pretty narrow in its sort of scope, but the impact that it has is wild. Like, I'm pretty sure I referenced this card when we were talking about Betsy's Bet Big, because that one wagers a gold, might, and vigor token when it attacks a hero. So the fact that you can go, okay, I have a gold and 2 blues in my hand with a Bet Big arsenal or whatever. Or you have the Double Down arsenal. You use your gold to bet big, or you use your gold to double down, and then you use the 2 blues to bet big, and then you can use Betsy's ability to give it +1 or whatever else you want to do. You can leave up pummel if you want, even. And then this has from Double Down +3 overpower, so you're coming in for 11 with overpower, and it wagers a gold, might, and vigor. So if you win, you get 2 of each of those. And then, like I said, you're using 2 blues anyway, so might as well just leave up pummel and then have that be your attack for 15. Your opponent discards a card too, just to really rub it in. That is probably the ceiling. Like, I don't want to say that that's going to be the average use case for Double Down, but the idea of that getting 2 golds, 2 vigors, 2 mites off of this card is crazy. I like that it has an alternate resource cost. I genuinely think this is a good card in like Olympia as well, because Olympia will care a lot about wagering. He'll create 2 golds no matter what, even regardless of what it wagers, because he'll create one from his hero ability. This will double it. Yeah, it's wild. I love this card. Is it good? I don't know. It's wacky though, and that gives it a fresh for me. Like, I want it. I want to play this card.
Yeah. I mean, this card's
Really cool.
I think this card's pretty insane. First of all, the ability to pay nothing for this is relevant in all 4 heroes that we got of these relevant classes, right? I think that you're going to create some gold with Victor. You're going to create some gold with Betsy, and she cares about wagering. You could make Victor care about wagering in a way. Casai creates gold. You can make Casai care about wagering. Olympia creates gold and cares about wagering all the time. I'm thinking, so you could just pop this on a gold. Your next attack is going to get +3 in overpower. You attack, well, it's not wagering yet. Let's say you're swinging in with an axe or something like that, and then you up the ante for X equals 3 and Y equals 4 or whatever, like, and then you're like really doing it, and then you're creating all the tokens as well. There is so much upside here. It's pretty insane. I think it's actually a fresh to death. I think this is a bomb. This is a huge
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think this. I mean, I don't know. They didn't even have to make it free for a gold. I don't think. I think that was. I think that's probably more for the Warriors who aren't as high on the resource stuff. But really sweet card. Now we have our third clash cycle here. This one does create a vigor. And now the only interesting thing about this one, so this is Clash of Vigor. It comes in all 3 colors. It's a rare, 6, 5, and 4 at the attack, and it blocks for 3. It's a Guardian Warrior attack action. When it defends, clash with the attacking hero, the winner creates a Vigor token, which is quite good, as we've talked about. This is a Guardian card, which I think makes this a little bit more appealing. And I think about Victor, especially because Victor's playing a lot of cards that care about winning clashes. I think that this is a card that could actually see play. It's a little tough because you got to probably play the blue, and that's like a blue 4 in Guardian, which is not that great. But that being said, it's definitely higher than the other ones. I would say like a high stale here.
Yeah. The fact that it's a Guardian card does sort of save it, as it were, because it is genuinely more likely that you will win the clash and get the vigor. And kind of like we were mentioning in preparation for this block of cards, vigor tokens are really good, and I think they're probably good in the most amount of situations. Because just having a resource to do something with, I think is always going to be pretty decent. Even if you have no cards in your hand, your weapon attack probably costs 1. You just get to do that. So I think that Clash of Vigor probably itself is pretty solid. Especially in something like Victor, where you're probably going to have an abundance of gold anyway. You're just gonna be like, whatever. I can pay a gold to try to rig the odds in my favor, so I can get a resource next turn. Yeah, I think it's fine. It's probably more of a limited card than it is a constructed card, but I could see this in constructed, honestly. Getting a resource is always totally fine. So yeah, probably honestly, probably low fresh. I'm not super upset about this card. It is much better. Again, this is a warrior card. Technically, I don't think it's a warrior card. This is a guardian card.
Yeah, no, not at all. But hey, it exists, and
it certainly does.
So does the next card, and the next card's art, which is pretty
wild. Yeah. So this next card's art is kind of unsettling. The fact that you can see all of this guy's bottom teeth is just upsetting to me a little bit, but whatever. I do like it because it has a lot of personality. It has a lot of like flavor to it. This one's Slap Happy. And this is a Guardian Warrior instant that comes in red, it costs 0, and the next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent 2 of that damage if you do create a Vigor token. So we've kind of already talked about the other 2 in this cycle. Again, creating a Vigor is fine, but I feel like the 0 to prevent 2 is just like not a good enough stat line to justify running this. Funny thing is, it kind of costs -1. It's kind of the way that it works out. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not super feeling it. If you're really looking for damage mitigation, you just play Oasis Respite. And if you're looking for more past the 3 copies of Oasis Respite red that you're running, you just start running other copies of Oasis Respite, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Probably like mid stale, maybe low stale for this one.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it like a mid stale, and the only reason is, and this, don't even think about playing this in Guardian because you're doing way more efficient defensive stuff than this all the time. This, however, I can see a world where this is a free 2-block red in like Kasai, right? You get to just block 2, and you're that card.
It's about reds, yeah.
Yeah, and that Vigor token is just gonna replace this card in your hand, basically, right? You would have just pitched it, and then you can do whatever you're gonna do. That being said, it's not the best. It's not like crazy, but there is some application there that I think could see some fringe play, and that's probably why it kind of lands in that mid stale slot there. So, but we do have another block. We're hitting all the what do you call them? The cycles here. The one of cycles, the red cycles. So here's Hardy block, which is the Guardian Warrior block. Blocks for 3. This one cares about Vigors. When this defends, if you control a Vigor token, gain 1 life. Not going to do it, I don't think. Same rating as the last one. I think this is pretty garbo for me. Rotten.
I'm about the same, although I did catch myself for a hot second thinking, oh, if you want a card that just like gains you a life, just play Heart of Fjendel.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But
easy.
Yeah. But again, like for these specifically, it's like they care about you having a specific token at the time that you're blocking with this. And unless you can guarantee that you have one of those tokens, like basically every turn, then, if this doesn't have its effect go off, it's bad. So yeah, rotten as well. Although the art is by Carlos Cruchaga, who's a big, he's not my friend, but I'm his friend, that sort of thing, where he doesn't really know that I exist. It's parasocial.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, he's killing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what about Test of Vigor?
So Test of Vigor is another block card, but I do actually think this one's interesting. It's a red Guardian Warrior block, blocks for 4, and when it defends, you clash with the attacking hero. The winner creates a Vigor token. Again, I don't think this is a Warrior card. I think this is a Guardian block if you're really trying to consider it, and I don't think it's bad. Again, it's like it's kind of tough though because like you're likely to win the clash in Guardian. Or you're sort of more likely to win the clash in Guardian. But Guardian also has a lot of good defensive stuff that it can do anyway. So if you really need that amount of realistically for block cards, it's like you want to play around overpower. Or you want to really get that value out of stuff. Like if you're in Guardian and you're using this one card to block for 4 against a ninja, like you were using that example previously, you create a Vigor token off that. Like that's pretty good value. I don't know. It's a -1 block. Like you're saying, it kind of refunds itself because you're probably going to pitch this next turn anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that Guardian needs this kind of card, but I think if it did need it, then this card is not bad. So I think that probably puts it like high stale because Guardian just has so many options already. And I'm kind of evaluating this a little bit weird because it's against Guardian's existing pool of defensive cards. but I think that's kind of what you have to do for cards like this. Like this would be a tech card anyway into your meta. So looking at their options that already exist, I don't know that this necessarily beats it, but I do think it's interesting. So yeah, probably like high stale.
Yeah, I think it's probably high stale for most Guardians. I do see it at low fresh for Victor, just because of the Clash Matters clause, and can kind of use this as a really good way to gain momentum. The nice thing about Guardian is the Vigor token, at least at a minimum, you can activate your chess piece, which I'm blanking.
Yeah,
on
you
right
could
now.
tectonic plating.
Tectonic plating, which is fine. You just kick it down the road, right? You know, and that is totally fine. And Guardian doesn't mind taking turns off. You know, we've seen it a million times. So it probably low fresh in Victor, but high stale for the rest of them.
Yeah.
Now we have another cycle of cycles. This is the draw a card in the turn matters. This is Rising Energy. This is a 2 for 6. It's a common. Comes in all three colors. 6, 5, and 4. Blocks for 2. It's Guardian, a warrior attack action, and costs 2. If you've drawn a card this turn, this costs 1 less to play. I like a 1 for 6 as a as a root player, and I wish that this was a root card. But that being said, I mean, it's for the gold decks, right? If I think you pitch a blue into a gold, you draw into this, you pitched a blue to draw a card and play a 1 for 6, which is pretty good. I don't know if the 2 block is going to hold this back, but on its face, a 1 for 6, I'm a huge fan of. And with the only real downside of like maybe having to play it for 2, it doesn't seem that bad. I would say a low fresh here. And the kind of cool thing about it is a 1 for 6 that can be pummeled. So that's kind of neat too. So where do you come on it?
Yeah, I'm honestly like in about the same boat. Like looking at this as like you're saying a 1 for 6. That was where my mind first went, and I was like, if this was a brute card, just more pulpings, yes, please. But I mean, outside of that, like in Warrior, I don't hate this as an option, especially in somebody like Kasai that does care about drawing cards. Like you could potentially go like draw swords, which draws a card, makes your weapon attacks free, and then like maybe end your turn on a 1 for 6 if you have enough ways to like give your attacks go again. Or just go like 1 weapon attack that has go again from an agility token and then come in with this again. Like that's still a pretty good turn. Yeah, I actually do. I kind of like this card. Probably low fresh as well as like a support card for mostly warrior decks. I could see it in Victor, like you're saying as well. He'll probably like popping gold to draw cards, and he'll probably have a lot of blues anyway. So he'll do that exact play. Probably pitch a blue into a gold, draw into this, attack for 6. Is like a totally reasonable turn.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, I kind of love that. I mean, you know, we're not talking about limited, but I love that this is playable in every single one of the heroes, right? Like,
yeah.
Olympia is going to create gold, Casai, yada yada yada. It's really elegant. I love it. What does Vigorous Wind Up do?
So this is another cycle of the wind up cards, which wind up is currently the ones that discard themselves to do something, to make a token. And this one is also pretty interesting. This is the Guardian Warrior attack action cycle. Costs 3, comes in all 3 colors, so attacks for 7, 6, and 5, blocks for 2. And this one's discard this, create a Vigor token. So obviously immediate downside, or at least just a way that I have to shift my thinking from the other ones. The other ones we were able to just immediately say, oh, these are pretty good, because in Brute, discarding them at instant speed is phenomenal. Like in all of the Brutes, discarding these is awesome. So you don't have that sort of line of questioning, as it were, for this. But I do still think that like this could be potentially pretty good. Funnily enough, in like Guardian matchups where you're facing down like potentially a pummel or a crippling crush or something, if you're going to lose the card anyway, you might as well get something out of it. like basically pitch it in advance of next turn. That being said, I don't think this is as impactful right now with the like discard synergies. The discard synergies that you mentioned in Brute, I didn't even think about them at first, and then that colored my entire perception of them because that's just so crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the red one is maybe fine because it counts as a 3 for 6, and then it pitches for 1 either now or later. I think for most of these, you're gonna want the interaction with things that care about Vigor tokens. But yeah, for the blue, it's like you could either pitch this for 3 now or 1 later, and that feels like just pitch it for 3 later. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it has quite as many interactions as the brute ones do. So I think I'm lower on these on average, but probably like mid stale. Mid stale, I'm gonna say.
All right. So I like the blue for Guardian, only because it's a blue, and turn 1 or 0, you can just get out of the gates a little bit quick, right? But that being said, it's certainly not. It's not operating as good as the other ones with the brute synergies here. So I think it's like a high stale. I think like God. I mean, if I was a Guardian and I had the chance to start with like an extra vigor on my first like real turn, I would be pretty happy with it. But that being said, the 2 block scares me away from it mostly. But I think a high stale is probably where I would land for it. I can't really see like Warrior doing this that much. It just doesn't do it efficiently enough for them. So it's kind of interesting. I wish that Brute got that one, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And now we have Wage Vigor, which does what it says. It is another one of the cycles. Cost 3. It's a Guardian Warrior attack action. Attacks for 7, 6, and 5 in their respective colors, and it blocks for 2. And when this attacks a hero, you may wager a Vigor token with them. This is going to fall right into the last one, the Wage agility for me with like Olympia. I think like the red might be good enough there. You know, it's automatically something that's wagering, something that you can play some tricks on, and I think you're playing blues anyway, so like there is a real shot that you play this one. And Vigor tokens are really good, especially when they come tied to a gold token. That sounds pretty good to me, but it's probably like low fresh. I mean, it might end up being closer to high stale, but I think the power is there for Olympia.
Yeah, I was gonna put this right around low fresh as well. Again, I think with especially Olympia, like you're saying, you're gonna want a lot of things that just have wager tied to them. And this like it almost doesn't matter what the wager is for because of Olympia's ability. Like the baseline is that it's wagering a gold that your opponent can never get because it's coming off of Olympia's ability. You're not actually wagering the gold, which I think is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It protects you from accidentally feeding your opponent gold tokens. So yeah, I think this is a totally fine one. Again, I do think that Vigor is probably the most widely applicable token that you can get. So I fully agree that I think this one is probably just good enough to play in Olympia. 3 for 7 is fine. You're probably going to be playing a lot of resource cards because you care about gold. So yeah, I think this just fits in again. So yeah, probably low stale, maybe even mid stale. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I put the other one at, but I think they should probably both be at mid stale for the Warrior ones, or mid fresh. Is what I meant. I think they're good.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's like really dumped
just
on them.
going down, but I sound more optimistic about it.
Oh my god! Now, what does Lead with Heart do? This is our last lead cycle.
All right. So Lead with Heart is the Guardian Warrior one. It is a Guardian Warrior action, blocks for 2, comes in all 3 colors, and costs 1. It gives your next Guardian or Warrior attack this turn plus 3, or 2, or 1. It creates a Vigor token, and then it has Go again. So it kind of just refunds itself. That's kind of the way that I'm thinking about these Vigor token cards, is that especially because this one costs 1, you pay 1 into it now and it gives you a Vigor token later. It's kind of like this is a free +3 that has a tectonic plating activation attached to it. Which, like, I don't necessarily think that's bad. Again, I think that's like probably fine. I think this one, I could see the red on this one, I think specifically. Because I feel like you're gonna want the fact that it refunds itself. Maybe the blue too, though. I don't know. It's with these cards, it's really hard for me to accurately evaluate them, because you're getting the value on a different turn. But I do think the Vigor tokens are pretty good on just sort of an average blind turn. So I do actually kind of like this card again. I liked the other one and I like this one too. So I don't know, probably like low fresh as like a support card. Maybe high stale. Maybe I have rose colored glasses on these lead with cards, but I genuinely think they're pretty okay.
Yeah, I think I'm high stale as well. I like the blue. Yeah, like the kind of rebate here on the resources is good. You know, in Warrior, I like it. Vigor's just good in Warrior because you get to swing with your sword even if you blocked out, right? Like that's just what you want to do. So I do like it. Probably high stale. It's not like too crazy. The 2 block is a real hindrance here, like we've seen with a lot of the cards. But you know, I kind of like that cycle. You know, these tokens have been proven to be quite good, and you know, I kind of like that they exist. So that was the Guardian Warrior stuff. And all right, now let's get to the generics here, and we got a banger here to start off with, and it is Balance of Justice, which is a legendary generic equipment headpiece. Blocks for 2, and it has something new. Guardwell. When the combat chain closes, if this defended, put a -1 defense counter on it equal to its defense. So this is a fixed battle worn in a way, so it just happens all at the same time. So you don't get the block for 2 and then 1. You just get the block for 2, but it sticks around, and it's important that this sticks around because it does have an ability which says, instant, destroy this, draw a card. Activate this ability only if an opponent has drawn 2 or more cards this turn. This is such a cool headpiece. It's not great in every matchup, which I love, but it has some matchups where it is really, really important. Now you got to think about what is drawing 2, right? You got to think about Blood Rush Bellow. That's certainly the first one I think of. Heroes that are popping more than 1 gold in a turn. You have the Tome from Dromai. There are ways where this is pretty important. You have Kano, but I don't think you want to run this against Kano. But this card's awesome. I would say it's a low fresh to death, but it's a sideboard fresh to death in a way. And I think this is such a cool piece of equipment. I'm surprised we didn't see more Guardwell, unless there's more in the set. I didn't look, but I don't think there was. But Guardwell, I don't think there is either. Yeah, I know that they had mentioned they wanted to fix Battle Worn in a way, and this is obviously it. And I like it. I think I like Balance of Justice quite a bit here. How about you, Bill?
I do too. I think this is, like you're saying, absolutely a sideboard card. I like it against decks. Like it's weird because when you see draw a card, your immediate thought is, oh, like this lets me either keep cards in my hand to be aggressive on the next turn, or you know, it's usually you're like, oh, I can be proactive about something. But because it's gated behind a very reactive thing, like your opponent has to have drawn 2 or more cards for you to use this, it almost makes it like a very defensive card, where this to me almost blocks for like 5, because you block with it on the turn that your opponent uses Art of War or Blood Rush Bellow or whatever, and then you can break it to draw a card, and then that's another card in your hand to potentially block with. I don't know if that's me being like too passive of a player, but to me that's kind of what the value of this sort of implies. If it was something more more generic, like a Crown of Providence, then you don't need your opponent to be going all in on their turn for you to get the value off of Crown of Providence. You can just say, oh, I'm just going to throw this in front of a random attack to sort of filter this hand because it's awkward, make my hand a little bit better. This one just lets you draw a card, which is obviously more powerful than sinking a card. But it is very dependent on, it has to be a matchup where your opponent has the ability to draw 2 cards in a turn. And like, what are you usually doing on a turn where your opponent's drawn 2 cards? Probably blocking for your life. So, or at least it gives you options of what to block with from your hand. You can keep maybe 1 extra card in your hand and then still have a crackback on there. That being said, as a defensive option, I love this. Again, like you were saying, the fact that it's not just good into every matchup, I think is exactly where something like this needs to be. I'm really excited to pick this card up because it's going to be a fantastic option. Sideboard fresh to death, absolutely. Like, they did a good job balancing Battle Worn because obviously the big difference is that this only blocks for 2 instead of 3. In most games, 1 life and 1 extra block really does matter. Mm-hmm. So the fact that this just straight up blocks for 2, I think is great. Yeah, I love it. I love this card. I love the design. It's very, very careful, but very well implemented.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I cannot wait to collapsing trap someone and then activate my own Balance of Justice. That is going to be, I'm going to do it once. Replace my collapsing trap. I swear. I swear.
Oh, you're such a fiend.
Next we have Glory Seeker. What does this do?
So Glory Seeker, very similar because it also draws a card. This one's another generic equipment head piece. It's a common, doesn't block for anything, and it just has instant 3 destroy this draw card. So it is basically just a silver that starts on your head. In like, I guess it's instant speed, so it's a little bit different, but like, you're paying 3 anyway. I don't know. This just turns a blue into another random card from your deck. Does not feel exciting. If this blocked for 1 even as an option, then like, sure, it's kind of like a side grade to Iron Rot Helm. But yeah, I don't know. It's it's weird. I don't really like it very much. Very limited. Obviously works with things that care about drawing cards, like Casai in limited. If you don't get her specific helmet, then sure. But not feeling this one. I think it's for limited.
You are correct, and it is Draft Chaff and is going to be rotten. The next card is also
5 cold foils of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be beautiful. The next one is also falling into this category. It is a little bit more useful, I guess. It's Sheltered Cove. It's generic headpiece. Instant pay 3, destroy this. The next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent 2 of that damage. I don't want to be pitching a blue to do this. It's instant speed is good, so it's worth mentioning, but it's still rotten in my book. I don't think there's you could just play something that blocks 2 or play Arcane Barrier 2.
Yeah.
So
if I didn't know how to read and couldn't read any of the words on this card, I would probably give it a fresh because the art is really nice, actually. Like, unironically, the art on this card is really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like, even thinking back to like Dusk Till Dawn, there was that cycle of common equipment, the shadow ones that like you can just break them to prevent 2 and then they have blood debt. I would play that over this every single day of the week. If people recall back, if anybody's listening at this point, if you recall back to our Dusk Till Dawn set review, I actually rated those pretty highly because I do like them, and this is just worse than that. So
a lot worse.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
We do have we have a weird cycle of common equipment. I think. I guess we can read them all. They're all going to do the same thing except care about different things. If you just want to read all of them, because they're not that great.
Yeah, I'm not excited about these cards, but they seem exciting at first blush until you actually read them. This is a cycle of generic equipment that are the adversity cycle. So it's the head is face adversity, the chest is confront adversity, the arms are embrace, and the legs are overcome adversity. They all have Blade Break 2, which is a great stat line for common equipment, you say. You scream from from listener land over there. But they do have a caveat. And for example, Face Adversity, the head, may only block an attack if the attack's controller has drawn a card this turn. The chest can only block if the attack's controller has destroyed a Vigor token. The arms can only block if the controller has destroyed a Might token. And the legs can only block an attack if the attack's controller has destroyed an Agility token this turn. So all these things, like the block cards that we were looking at that care about you having a specific token in play while you're blocking with them, those are uncommon enough in terms of like you having that line up at that opportunity is already uncommon enough. These have they're a little bit higher than that because they're always in play and your opponent will be attacking you on basically every turn of the game. So whatever. But the fact that they're totally dead unless like if you're running the boots and your opponent's just like, oh, by the way, I don't actually want to make agility tokens in this deck. You're like, okay, cool. I don't have feet this game. Like, oh, that feels like such a gamble. Like you're putting a sideboard slot on these specifically. Yeah, I think these are rotten. I don't like them. Blade Break 2 is really strong and they successfully balanced it into the dirt. So
yeah, these are pretty rotten. I think you could only make a real argument for the draw card one, the headpiece, just because that is kind of relevant in a lot of decks, but still it's a little bit hard to kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just better headpieces. We've seen one already. It was
Yeah.
Bounds of Justice, and so it's tough to kind of, I guess, make an argument for these other than maybe wager, right? Like you're playing a lot of wager. You're like, I hope I lose them. I hope I lose my wagers, and you get those tokens so I can block with these really crappy equipment that I decided to play instead of good stuff. So
God, imagine hoping that you lose so that you can get value off of your stupid equipment.
Yeah. Well, somebody's gonna be doing it.
Oh, for sure.
I can't wait. That's gonna be a fun armory, and I'm gonna lose to it. Next, we have another cycle of common equipment. This is I guess, we'll call it the headliner suite here. Yeah. They all have Blade Break with star defense. They're generic, and all of their defense is equal to the number of opposing heroes with greater life than you. So these are pretty good not pretty good. They are decent in UPF, right? But in the sake of competitive or at least casual back and forth CC and Blitz, these are always just going to be Iron Rots. So that is where they are, and that's not good enough. So especially we keep getting better options. But really fun for UPF and very fun for the UPF draft format that this set also comes with, which is really neat. So cool stuff. But we also did get an offhand with it, which is worth noting.
Yes. There's also a shield. Yeah.
The shield, which is a common generic shield. That's something. I don't know if that's still better than running a second claw or a second sword or something like that. But do you have?
I will say in UPF these are actually like relatively good because if you're already behind or whatever, then if you're behind all three opponents, then they block for 3, which is pretty solid. Especially the shield. The shield is like pretty solid in UPF. Yeah. But you're completely right for constructed. These are Iron Rot minus even. They are worse than Iron Rot because sometimes you'll have more life than your opponent. And these block for 0. So.
Yeah, exactly. But what does Nasty Surprise do? Now we have some generic Majestics, which is usually where we get some real spice.
And spice we have. Oh, man. So Nasty Surprise is a very interesting one. This is a generic attack action. It's a blue that is a blue 0 that blocks for 3. So my immediate thought is Ninja. But the effect is actually pretty good. It attacks for 2 also, which I didn't mention. But this reads, whenever an opponent's effect puts this into your graveyard from anywhere, you create an Agility, Might, and Vigor token. So you create one of each token from the set other than gold. This card it lives in a very similar space as Snag does. To me, this is like Snag is sort of the poster child of like a very narrow but very impactful sideboard card. If your opponent is playing like Collapsing Trap, then this gives you the ability to just get a little bit of sort of buyback from that effect happening to you. If they're playing anything that mills cards, like if they're playing Grinding Gears or whatever, because this is specifically when an opponent's effect puts this into your graveyard from anywhere. So if it's from your deck, if it's from your hand, then it gives you an Agility, Might, and Vigor token. In most matchups, this will probably not do anything. But like, for example, against Guardian, who cares so much about discarding cards from your hand, we even saw Concuss, I think, was one of the common or rare cycles. I think it was a common cycle in this set that if its attack is greater than its base, it makes your opponent discard a card on hit. If you discard this card from that effect, then you create an Agility, Might, and Vigor token. It is very much a sideboard card, but I think in the situations where it's good, it's very good. So yeah, I'm like pretty high sideboard fresh on this. I really like it, and again, like I was saying, at its base, it's a blue that blocks 3. So again, it is like you're not going to be running this in your main board, but even if it doesn't happen, it still does a lot of stuff. Like if this was a red, I'd feel much worse about it. But in situations where it's not even being discarded, it's still just a resource card and a block card. So I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I love really this. Good. I love this at the sideboard fresh rating, because if you have a blue that in your deck that is only really a resource card, you can just bring this in, right? Like, yeah. And all of a sudden it's good in that matchup. CNC, pop this out of like that feels really good if they CNC.
Oh yeah, if this is in your arsenal and CNC pops it, you still get it. Oh my god!
And I bet we're gonna get another elemental wizard ice at some point. So when we got to deal with the discard effects that Icelander used to have, this becomes another because it's also a blue, but you can also be like, yeah, like a lot of times. What is the name of that card?
Coronet Peak?
No, well, Coronet Peak, yeah, but also the spell that does it. If it.
I think it's Ether Ice Vein.
Ether Ice Vein.
Yeah.
With Brute, when they did that and you had Beast Within, you just like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like I'll just get the card back. And with this, it would be the same thing for any deck, which is really cool. So I think a very high sideboard fresh for Nasty Surprise. Now,
yeah.
The next card's pretty interesting. I kind of love this next card here. Pay Up, which is a red Majestic. It's a generic attack action. It costs 3, attacks for 6, and blocks for 3. It's a popper. If defending hero controls a gold, this gets overpower. And when this hits a hero, gain control of a gold token they control if you don't deal 1 damage to them. So that's pretty cool. So I love this card. I think this is just like a fine card to play if like you expect to see gold, which I'm sure we will, right? With all these new heroes, and then on top of that, with like Crown of Dominion decks, like the Royal decks out there, all of a sudden, they play it like they don't pop it right away, and you're just like, all right, turn 0 or turn 1, pay up with overpower. I take your gold, like that's like pretty awesome. And then of the like if they just happen to not have a gold and you like hit them and they don't have it, you just get to deal a free damage, which is pretty good. Yeah. That being said, I think it's like a sideboard fresh. It's not as good as like Nasty Surprise in terms of the sideboard slots, but I love this card. It's like just a flavor win. Like and I love that little gremlin goblin thing. I don't know.
Yeah, the guy just like perked on one guy's back.
Yeah, it's like the mob boss. Like, yeah, get him. But
yeah, no, I agree. Honestly, the flavor is really good on this card, and it's like especially because like the flavor behind it is it gets overpower because if you see somebody that's flaunting their wealth, then you're more likely to target them, and you're gonna put more manpower behind it. So yeah, it gets overpower because you see that they have a gold, and you're like, well, I want that. And then against that's so funny. Against Crown of Dominion decks, you just like go turn one, try to steal your gold, and if they want to put a bunch of stuff in front of it, like they probably have to put equipment in front of it too. Then sure, that's a fine trade-off, especially on turn one. Yeah, I like pay up. Definitely like a mid sideboard fresh, but still fresh. Like don't get me wrong, still fresh.
It is very, very cool. I love that card. It just makes me laugh. But what does Ripple Away do?
So Ripple Away, once again, like I was kind of mentioning with Sheltered Cove, if I could not read this card at all, this gets a fresh to death for art. Carlos Cruchaga, it's the Crouching Tiger sort of style, like the watercolor. Excellent job, hit it out of the park. That being said, what this card actually does, it is a blue 4 attack card that costs 2, blocks for 3, and it's just a generic attack action. It also has instant, you can discard this. If an action card would create 1 or more tokens this turn, instead it creates that many -1 of each of those tokens. So actually very interesting. Because this affects the rest of the turn. So if your opponent had like a couple of things that like wager, or if they had clash or stuff like that, this most of the time will just blank all of that. It is also like just sort of incidentally good against decks like Dromai. Unfortunately, it's just action cards, so it doesn't affect Dromai's ability. She'll still get ashes if she pitches reds, but like if they play I'm trying to think of the one that makes 3 ash tokens, then makes one of them into an Ashwing. I think this still maybe no, it doesn't quite hose that because it transforms one of the ashes into an Ashwing. It doesn't like create an Ashwing. If it like prevented them from creating the Ashwing, that'd be crazy. But yeah, this one's again like super limited sideboard card, but I do think in the meta that we're going to see where people are wagering and stuff, this could be pretty good. It just blanks a turn of wagering, it blanks a turn of clashing. Against Betsy's headpiece, this is actually like kind of a funny response to it, because they break a gold and then it's like, okay, well, even if you win this wager, you don't get anything. Nobody gets anything actually, because it does not create anything even if you win the wager. So yeah, I don't know. This one's like a little bit more limited, but if it was another like blue 0, then I would like that too, because then it's another ninja card. It just works into Kadachi's. But yeah, I don't know. I think this one's probably like a low sideboard fresh. I still think it is good in situations where people are wagering a bunch, but I think it's a little bit less impactful on average than something like Naughty Surprise when you're bringing them in their respective matchups.
Well, let me blow your mind, Bill, because you forgot about
no.
one really, really like unfortunate what I'm thinking of for someone who plays Riptide. This blanks your Codex of Frailties. It doesn't blank them completely. You still get the card back but you don't get the Ponder and the
Intoxicating Shot.
It blanks anything like that. Inertia. All the traps that create them, all the laces, stuff like that. I assume the laces. It's not on. I guess maybe it doesn't stop on hits. I'm not sure.
I think it does, because they would still come from an attack action source. Like the action card itself is the one that is still creating the token. So yeah,
but the Codex
so defensively against Rangers,
this is a huge hoser to Rangers. Even if you just like manage to save it against the Codex of Frailty, it feels, because Codex of Frailty all of a sudden just becomes, all right, I'll just get an arrow of my choice and that's it. And whatever, I don't get to replace it. I don't get to do the Frailty, which is really important against you. I think this is probably a high sideboard fresh. I think if we see a Codex meta, Ripple Away is going to be very annoying, but it is certainly good, and I love that art. It is amazing. I believe that Carlos did post a Twitter thing for anybody interested of like the progress shots of painting that.
He's so good.
He really
He's
is
such a good artist, man.
Next we have Standing Order, which this card is so cool. I love this card. This is a red, majestic attack action generic. Attacks for 4, blocks for 3, costs 0. That's pretty great stats. All right, what does this do? When this attacks or defends, you may put a card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck. If you do, this gets +2 attack and +2 defense. Folks, this card's the real deal. It becomes a popper on defense. It becomes a block 5 on defense. It attacks 0 for 6 if you have the arsenal. It is such a just bread and butter card. This card's so good. I don't think it's like weird because it's so good, but like also I feel like it's not so good that you feel like you have to play it in every deck. It's going to be still hard to kind of find room for it, but it still has so many uses that it will just sneak into decks in certain metas where you're just like, oh wow, this. And it fixes. I mean, it doesn't fix your arsenal. It's not like a Crown of Providence here, but it does clear your arsenal if perhaps you had to put something less than ideal in there. But I think this is I think it's on its face. I got to give it a fresh to death. I think like just everything it's doing and the amount of flexibility here, it's hard not to give this a fresh to death. And it's just a matter of where is it going to be? Like what decks are going to play it?
Yeah, this card just does so much. It is so good. Like at its base, it's a 0 for 4 that blocks for 3. It is I believe it's Wounding Blow, which I did unironically play in like Ira back before I could afford like I think it was like before E-Strikes, before Command and Conquers. Like I needed an efficient card that did some stuff and still blocked, and Wounding Blow was good enough. So at its absolute floor, this is a Wounding Blow. The fact that it has the benefit of, sometimes coming in for 6, sometimes blocking for 5 on one card against something like Dominate, something like Overpower. If an Azalea comes at you with an overpowered, like non-buffed but still or dominated red in the ledger, this just blocks it for itself. Like you don't have to put a piece of equipment in front of it; it's just blocked. It is also a popper if you're able to activate it, because it goes up to 6 power. Like this card is so good. I don't think that it is necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily on the level of Enlightened Strike, but I think it's closer than I was evaluating it previously. I still think Enlightened Strike is better, but I think this is not that far off. I would say it would be on par or better than Enlightened Strike if it was put a card from your hand or your arsenal on the bottom to get that effect. But with it just being from arsenal, that is unfortunately a little bit limited. I do still think this is a fresh to death. I love this card. This was one of my top 5s, like very, very easily. And the more I think about it, the more I like it. So yeah, Standing Order is like I think maybe one of the best generic cards in the set.
Yeah,
it's
so
there's a few things vying for that spot, but I think Standing Order is really good.
And the next card might be one of them. What does the next card do?
So the next one is Tenacity, which is, I think you're right, this is another very good card. This is a majestic attack action. It attacks for 2, blocks for 3, pitches for 2, and costs 0. So it's a 0 for 2, just on its own. When this attacks, it gets +X, where X is the number of defending cards on the combat chain. And it is defending cards, not defending like action cards or anything. Like this counts equipment, this counts cards from hand. It's kind of the opposite of not Bittering Thorns. There's a ninja card that gets +1 for each attack that has hit this combat chain. It is the inverse. Salt the Wound. That's what it is. It's the inverse of Salt the Wound. It's however many things your opponent has blocked with. If they decide to like overblock a bunch on all of your stuff, then this just gets buffed up a ton. This becomes like a 0 for 7. Which ending your turn on a 0 for 7 or potentially higher it feels really good. It feels really, really good. Yeah, I think this card's crazy, especially for ninjas where, you're going to want to go pretty wide and force your opponent to block with a bunch of stuff. And and it's going to create a really awkward dichotomy for your opponent to think about if you're playing, if you're playing this in Fi. It's like, oh, do I want to block everything really effectively so that their Salt the Wound doesn't come in for as much, or am I just going to get blown out by Tenacity? Or the inverse. Like, this Tenacity is so much worse if you just take everything and you don't block anything. Like, it's... Yeah, this gave ninjas an additional card that I don't think they necessarily needed, but they're going to really appreciate. So yeah, in ninjas, this is like super fresh to death. This card is really strong.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's a tool for other like go wide decks as well. Any go wide deck that is printed, like you look at Tenacity now, you're like, this is such a good cherry on top of my combat chain here. And so like looking at the stats here, at a yellow 0 for 3, that is the common rate. At a yellow 0 for 4, you're starting to do something. Yellow 0 for 5 and up, that's, you've already gotten the value. So like this card can be such a punishing card, and people are going to lose to this. I mean, and you're right. The dichotomy of this versus Salt the Wound, or even some of the other, kind of what's the I keep forgetting card names. There's too many cards now. This game's too big. We need to stop. Cards. LSS, quit now. No, I can't remember all of them. But the other 5 card that has that gets plus if you have 4 or more.
Lava Burst.
Lava Burst. Yes.
Yeah.
So like, and as well as the one that like destroys arsenals as well. Like now Fi has 4 different things you got to think about when they're going wide. Like, what are they finishing this combat chain with? And Tenacity is a real humdinger there. So I would say, fresh to death in certain decks, right? Some decks just won't be able to use it, but that's okay. That's how it works. Next card, I had to reread this one at pre-release over the weekend. And somebody was like, "I'm seducing you," and I was like, "What?" This is Seduce Secrets. This is Seduce Secrets. This is a yellow generic instant at Majestic, costs 0. It says, look at target hero's hand and the top card of their deck. If this was played from Arsenal, draw a card. This is a cool card, I think. I don't think it's great, and I think that's where I am at with it. I think it's kind of neat. If you're not playing it from Arsenal, I'm not interested at all. That being said, a hero like Riptide can throw this into Arsenal and you just get free information and get to replace the card. I have thought a lot about that as a Riptide player. So that being said, I think it's like a high stale, like low fresh. Like there's not a lot that's wrong with it other than the instant part. So it's weird. Like I think once we get to a point in the game where that kind of knowledge is going to be a major advantage. I think knowledge is quite good right now, but like if we get to a point where it's like certain decks, you need to know what they're going to do next turn to kind of shape your turn. I could see this finding a slot, but currently I think it's like a high stale, low fresh. It will find its place. I'm glad that it exists, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're right that like eventually I think this card will be pretty interesting. Especially because like you get to see their entire hand, so there might be effects that care about like, oh, name a card or like name a type of card if your opponent has 2 or more of the named type do a thing, whatever. I could see something like this be relevant, so that you don't have to guess or so that you can get more value off of something. But the way that we talked about it on the Living Legends podcast, I very much appreciate, which was, this is a great card if you want your opponent to show you exactly how you're going to die this turn.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let me see your hand. And they're like, cool, you're getting attacked for 35. And you're like, okay, had a good time. Yeah, I was trying to think of as well, like what would make this card better for me, especially like, again, not thinking of future proofing it, just saying like what would make me excited about this card right now. And I was like, well, what if it just like always drew a card? And I'm like, I don't think Flesh and Blood can handle a just free instant draw a card. I don't think that is healthy for the game, so I don't think that could happen. Like it needs to be gated behind something. But yeah, I wasn't really able to find it. I do think like it has potential, and the fact that it's just a free instant, maybe at some point this will be a good card, like something that people actually want to play in either sideboards or main boards. But right now I don't really see it. I think I'm like pretty stale on it overall, but with room to grow.
Certainly. And if you are seduced, there will be growth. I will tell you that much. But speaking of, what does down but not out do?
Yeah, speaking of things that incite growth, down but not out is actually kind of just a crazy card. This is the first generic rare that we're going to be looking at, and it's in a cycle. This is a generic attack action cycle. It comes in all three colors. Costs 3, attacks for 5, 4, and 3, and blocks for 3, which is like not a very great stat line. But its effect is when this attacks a hero, if you have less life and control fewer equipment and tokens than them, this gets +3 attack, overpower, and when this hits, you create an agility, might, and vigor token. So, like we were kind of saying with Nasty Surprise, creating one of each token is great. The fact that this, when you're behind, is a 3 for 8 with overpower that also gives you those benefits. This card's nuts. Like, this card is really, really, really strong. And I think something that cannot be understated is that the red is a 6 in KO. Like, I love this card. It does so much work. If you're behind, this like really does help to sort of claw you back into a game that you might otherwise be losing. Yeah, this card is surprisingly strong. This feels like a majestic at the very least. I think that this is like a low fresh to death, honestly. I'm a big fan of this card. Yeah, I really, really like Down But Not Out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. So, like, the only thing that I get, it's certainly powerful. And I got to play it the pre-release, and I was like, holy smokes. And it had go again from an agility token the last turn.
Ooh.
Which was, that was just so cool. But they had blocks in hand, so it wasn't that great. So maybe blocks are good, Bill. No.
Maybe blocks are good. That's what I'm saying.
The only thing I get hung up on in Constructed is the less tokens part of this, because initially people thought that this was you have to have less life and then a combined less equipments and tokens. It is one of each. Like it checks all three.
It checks 3 categories. Yeah.
So less tokens is harder to hit, I think, in general in Constructed. Now, if that becomes like a thing where you don't actually have to worry about that, if like a lot of people are creating tokens, and a lot of the heroes that we see now do, we could start to see this be a real contender. I almost like the blue in a way, because it's a blue block 3 and could just be a blue 6. I mean, not for brutes in a way, but a blue 6 when it attacks with like this,
and like with overpower, with some type of evasion. Still, that 6 is still an awkward thing to block with one action from hand. So
yeah. So like, I think that I do like it. I'm not quite fresh to death on it, but I'm probably in the fresh range. I think on the blue, I kind of really like it. It's just like this really like kind of like a card that can just come out of nowhere and win the game towards the end of the match. But super cool. I love the flavor of it too. Just like obviously killed a bunch of things on the arena and then has a bunch of spears pointed at him, and he's like, see what we can do. Next we have Wage Gold, which is a generic attack action at rare. Comes in all 3 colors. Attacks for 7, 6, and 5. It blocks for 2, and it costs 3, but it has Universal, which says, while in any zone, this is the same class as your hero. And when this attacks a hero, you may wager a gold token with them. This is cool because it says anybody can have a popper with text that says your benefits for your certain class stuff work with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
except for Illusionist. This is not a popper for Illusionist because it becomes an Illusionist attack, but that's okay. They don't need it. I like, it's just like a really bread and butter card for the game. I think,
Mm-hmm.
I think at least the 6 at the yellow and the red, just kind of having that is kind of cool, and just be able to give everybody the ability to wager a gold is kind of cool as well. That being said, it's going to live in sideboards mostly at probably like a high stale, low fresh, but wage gold's pretty cool. I'm interested to see what other universal cards we get in the future.
Yeah, they've really opened a door here with creating, like, saying that they're comfortable creating a card that can exist in any class, but it's like, yeah, like you're saying, it's like generic plus, where this is, if you're playing this in an illusionist deck, it's an illusionist, so it's an illusionist attack, so it has go again from Luminaris, or it gets buffs from illusionist things or whatever. Um, if there's like target warrior attack gets +3, or like we've seen a lot of, this counts for that. Um, like, that's a very interesting space for a card to live in. And it would be really hard for an effect, I think, more broad than something like wager a gold token. It'd be hard to really determine how it impacts the game. If it was like a more complicated effect or like a more powerful card. But that being said, yeah, I really like it. I think that this is just going to be, for me, the most immediate thing is that this just goes in Olympia as another way to wager stuff. Um, but yeah, just the fact that now everybody can create a gold token, in addition to something like, Crown of Dominion. This works really well if you're just playing cash in. You just want to play cash in. You can just play this card, and now you have the ability to make a gold token
Yeah.
potentially. Yeah, I like it. I think just from the design alone, I have to give it at least a fresh. It's really interesting. It's really intriguing, and I think this is going to be one of those cards that people just sort of come back to every now and then. Be like, is this card really good now? Because I think that there's a possibility that this or another universal card could just all of a sudden be like, oh, this is busted. Like, this is really good.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you know what? I'll bring it up a little bit because I think I'm definitely solidifying the low fresh, because like I'm starting to think about all the different things. You just think about anything that cares about certain classes. You're just like, oh, I'm into that. This makes sense. Yeah. We have a couple reprints here. First is Reinforce the Line. We don't need to talk about that. It is still as good as it always was. Adrenaline Rush, which is still as good as it always was, but we do have Performance Bonus. What does this do, Bill?
So Performance Bonus is another one of the, there's like a cycle of cards that all, like, if they're played from Arsenal, they get go again. They're small attacks that if they're played from Arsenal, they get go again. This is another addition to that. So this is a 0-cost attack for 3 that blocks for 2. It also attacks for 2 and 1 in the other 2 colors that it has. When this hits, create a gold token, and then if this was played from Arsenal, it gets go again. So similar to, like, Scour the Battlescape and, Frontline Scout,
which we'll see.
yeah, trade in. Yeah, there's a lot of these types of cards, and honestly, I think the payoff of getting a gold token is pretty good. like if you're making your, I love these types of cards. I love the blues of them specifically, because like if your opponent's putting an entire card in front of this to prevent you from getting a gold token, I think you're probably laughing. Like, you're probably having a great time. Like, your opponent can probably full block it with a card from hand if you're just playing the red anyway. So you might as well make them feel bad for being like, oh, I'm going to attack you with this blue performance bonus from my arsenal. It has go again. It's attacking you for 1. They're like, okay, I'll block for 3 from my hand. I'm like, yes, loser. Yeah, I don't know. I think on hit creating a gold token is pretty good, honestly. I'm probably going to play around with this card in some capacity. It's still probably realistically like a stale, but I think these cards are always really cool when they come around, so I'm happy to see another one.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think it will live where the other ones are. I do have a Riptide deck that I mess around with that plays all of those cards and doesn't even play a bow, which is kind of cool because you can just like premeditate, put one of those into Arsenal, and then it's like 6 go again. But It's not that great, but it steals wins, and this is just another one that like you actually get a lot of value out of. So
Yeah.
I love to see stuff like this, and then you can almost just like add the cash ins into that deck. Now the wheels are turning. Performance bonus is sweet, and I mean the woman in that art so ripped. I just want to be punched in the face by her. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, look at those abs, man.
Yeah. Those are, I know they're fantasy because I could never get them ever, no matter how hard I try. Oh my God.
Feel ya.
Well, I'm drinking a beer right now, so that's probably the reason. And next we have Raleigh the Rear Guard. Reprint, still as good as it always was. Trade In, which we just mentioned. I mean, this card was always pretty fringe playable of all of them, especially with like Rhinar kind of implications, but it's still kind of living in the same space as all those Go Again cards. Lunging Press at common now, which is just great for limited. I'll tell you that. It's still as good as it always was, but we do have money where your mouth is, not even where your mouth is. This is
Where your mouth.
yeah. This is a common generic non-attack action cycle. Blocks for 2, costs 1, and it comes in all 3 colors. Costs 1, and it says your next attack this turn gets +3, +2, and 1 relative to the colors that they are. And when this attacks a hero, you may wager a gold token with them. Go Again. This is a pretty decent wager, right? Like putting the gold token onto things. I kind of like the red here, if anything, maybe for Olympia, just like to give your weapon a wager, a relevant one. You get 2 golds, and then you can kind of get off to the races with it. So that being said, maybe like a low fresh, high stale for Olympia. I think it's going to play it. I think maybe Casai might be interested as well. But the nice thing is it can be played in anything. I don't love the 1 cost in terms of the math of a lot of decks, but it could be something.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like the other ones that we were talking about. The like come to fight with upside, and yeah, this one having wager a gold token, it's going to be great in Olympia. I'm definitely going to be running some amount of these just to make sure that you're wagering every turn. This kind of reads wager 2 gold tokens, but your opponent will only ever get 1 if they end up winning somehow. So yeah, I do like this card as like a support card for wager decks. I think this is just going to be something that ends up being foundational. I do still kind of like blues, just having options, but I do think the red is probably what you're going to be more excited to see. But yeah, I like it. This is another one that I think we've seen. We saw like pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a good example of what this format wants to do.
Yeah. And another one we saw pretty early on is the next card.
Yeah, so this one is modeled after a good friend of the Flesh and Blood community, Joe. This is Starting Stake, and it's a common generic action that we saw like really, really early on. It's a yellow that costs 0, blocks for 3, and it just reads, if you control no gold tokens, create a gold token. So this gets you going. This is like, if you see this on turn 1 and you have nothing else that you want to do, this creates a gold token for free, which is a spectacular rate, by the way. Something else that I think is cool is that this is specifically a yellow, so that if you do have a gold token, you can pay this into the gold token and draw a card. Pretty like slick design in that way. I think this is balanced exactly where it should be. I think if this like had to go again, like people would kind of expect this would have to cost more than 0. If it just created a gold token, I think that's too good. So yeah, I think this is like balanced exactly where it needs to be, and I really like it a lot. Yeah, I don't know exactly how relevant this card will be from like a constructed standpoint, but I do just have to sort of wax poetic about good design when I see it. So, yeah, I'll probably put this one like, I want to say like high stale. I will say high stale because I do want this card to be good. It is limited in its way, but also again, it's like a yellow that blocks for 3, even if you do have a gold that pitches into the gold. It just kind of all fits in. Maybe you play this in every gold deck. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah, I don't know how to rate this card, to be honest.
It's hard.
It's very hard, but like I'm glad it exists. It's another one of those cards. I think it's a really great card for UPF and the casual formats. Will it be good enough for competitive? I'm not convinced, but I'll give it like a mid stale as like a safety net, right? I don't think it can go below that. It can definitely go higher than that though. And if we get more gold matters, starting stake starts to look a lot better. Next, we have a block that we also saw a long time ago. Test of Strength, which is a generic block. It's red. Blocks for 4. Great stats. When this defends, clash with the attacking hero, the winner creates a gold. I like this in decks that can win the clashes. I mean, that's basically where it goes. And I think I look at this for Victor. Victor really likes this. This is like I think an automatic Victor card, right? Because cares about the gold, cares about clashing. The gold cares about clashing. Everything cares about everything. It's firing on all cylinders. Outside of that, maybe some of the other Guardians, but I would say this is a solid fresh in Victor though.
Yeah, that was it's the reason that I responded so like so loudly when you said Victor is because I was thinking that the second that you said it. I was like, oh, this is sick in Victor. Yeah. And you said it and I was like, hey, yeah, it is. Because like this is a red block 4 that like we were kind of mentioning, that's where I'd want a block to be anyway. If this was like the other ones that only blocked for 3, I'd be like a lot less excited about it. But the fact that in Victor this kind of reads like if you win the clash, you get a gold and draw a card. That's ridiculous value. That's so good. Like people do so much less to draw a card. People use sort of like worse cards to draw a card. I'm thinking specifically of That All You Got, which by the way, I do like that card a lot, but it is a lot more limited than something like this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, in Victor, I think this card's easy fresh. Card's really, really good in Victor. It plays exactly what he wants to, especially if you like win a clash with the Golden Sun off this. Oh.
I mean, it's insane. I mean,
you're already dead.
Victor is legitimately scary, and that is the end of the main set. We do have a couple expansion slot cards. Hopefully, we won't get them wrong. Although Warmongers was part of the main set when we got that one wrong, so maybe
if we have another Warmongers situation. It's already happened. It's in the past.
It's already happened. Here are the tokens if anybody wants to see what they look like. They look awesome. And Graven Call. What does that do?
So this one is really fun for me. It's an assassin weapon. It's a one-handed dagger that has 1 attack. It has the assassin baseline of once per turn action, pay 2 resources to attack, and then has go again. And it has piercing 1, just like every other assassin dagger. And then it has instant destroy 2 silver you control to equip this with a +1 counter. Activate this only while this is in your graveyard. So it fills out the complement of the assassin, stuff breaks and then you buy it back sort of thing. I actually do really like this card. I really like this card obviously in Arachne. Things that you can fulfill a bunch of contracts, get a bunch of silver, and get this back. This works with Flick Knives well, but not in the way that people, I think, initially thought of it, because even though it comes back as a 2-power weapon, Flick Knives specifically makes the weapon deal 1 damage. So you don't get it back and then have a Flick Knives for 2, but you're still getting the option to deal 1 very difficult to block damage back, like potentially 3 or 4 times over the game if you really wanted to go into it that way. And I think that's really strong. I love this card. And now you can play an entire, go down to the shops and rebuy your entire kit loadout. So I think that's good too. Yeah, I'm super fresh on this. I think this card is really strong and it works really well with Flick Knives, like I said.
Yeah, this card's pretty awesome. I'm almost not surprised they made it, but this soon. I would have seen this in a future Assassin set. And there are some other cool stuff outside of Flick Knives. It works well with, I think, Cash Out. You can pop this to go, get some some coins. Is it Knick-Knack Bric-a-Brac that you can pop this to go get items and then get the Graven Call back, if you have the silver? It's really, really neat. I love this card. I love the design. I love that we're just going to keep getting a suite of daggers, and that's so cool. And guess what? Brian Gottlieb is going to throw cards at Assassin until it's the best class of the game. I tell you that. And it's even more obvious with the next card, which is Coercive Tendency, which is an Arachne specialization. It's a blue, cost 0, assassin attack reaction. It blocks 3, blue, cost 0, attack reaction. Look at the top 3 cards of the defending hero's deck, put them back in any order, then banish the top card of their deck. If you complete a contract this way, your assassin attacks get go again. This combat chain, I mean, this is a fresh to death in Arachne, obviously. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I love this card. I understand that it's doing some stuff that other cards could already do in a way, but it does it so much more efficiently. It's doing what Arachne wants to do, banish stuff off the top, deck manipulation. It's kind of firing on all cylinders here. This is like the easiest fresh to death like card I've seen ever. Like I don't even have to question it. It's like obvious. Just shoo it in there.
Yeah, like why would you play an Arachne deck without playing this card? Like, it's so good. The thing that I really like about it too is like you have obviously, because this is an attack reaction, you've attacked with a card that likely has contract in some capacity already. If you attack react with this, you look at the top 3 cards. If you see 2 cards that can satisfy the contract, you can put them back as the top 2 cards, banish one of them with this, complete the contract, give your things go again. And then when your thing hits, it'll probably banish the top card again. You fulfill the contract again, you get 2 silver, and then you just keep going. Like, and it's a blue block 3. Like, they didn't need to make this card just so good, but they did. Yeah. Like high fresh to death in Arachne. This is like the Arachne card.
I think it could have been legendary, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. You could have only been able to play one of this card, and I think it'd still be way too good.
Well, like I said, Brian Gottlieb is going to just keep trying. Keep trying, buddy. Let's see what happens. What does Ancestral Harmony do?
So Ancestral Harmony is a ninja card. It is a majestic ninja card, like all of the expansion slot cards are. It's a blue 0 that blocks for 3. I've literally been mentioning it this whole time. Blue zeros that block 3 are really good in ninja. It also reads your attacks with combo get +1 this turn, and banish the top card of your deck. If it has combo, you may play it this turn. Go again. This card is, a lot of people have been equating it to Art of War. It's kind of Art of War. It's a blue Kodachiable Art of War, in that it even if you don't want to play it, it still allows you to Kodachi. And if
block.
you and block, it blocks. Why does it block? This is, I don't. Yeah, I actually have gotten the opportunity to play against this card already. Just a little bit of a spoiler for some future Goliath Gauntlet content that we're going to be revealing. But yeah, one of my friends that was playing against me was playing a ninja deck that was running this card, and it didn't come up super frequently, but one of the times it did, it presented a total value of, I think, 9. It added 9 damage to the turn. This there, and like I was thinking about it as well. The times that I've played Art of War and just completely bricked anyway, this has the same possibility to do that. But it's still a consistency card that can, if you build your deck in a way that you play more combo cards so that this is going to hit and it is going to like be more relevant, then yeah, this card could be a 0 for 5 even. 0 for 5 is great because even if you buff 1 attack and you banish a thing that you then get to play that has 3 attack or something, that's still good. I'd still play that. Yeah, I think this card's crazy. I think this card's at least a high fresh. I'm really big fan, and I'm putting this in. It doesn't go in every ninja deck. That's the downside. But in the ones where you're playing a large percentage of combo cards, this card's crazy. Really good.
Yeah, I think High Fresh is a great rating for it. I think that it has some nice variants to it, right? Like you can whiff, and that's like kind of mid, right? And you're just like whatever. But when it hits, you're just like, well, good game. Here we go. It is scary, and I don't know if Ninja really needed it, to be honest. But who am I to say? Who am I to say? But no, that card is super cool. Next, we got a new Evo. Just when you thought we weren't getting any more mechanologist cards, we got one more.
Thank God. I thought we were going to go one set without getting a mechanologist card.
Evo Magneto, which is a Evo card, it's a blue, cost 1. It is a mechanologist action equipment, Evo arms. It blocks for 2. If you have a base arms equipped, transform it into this, then equip this. When this defends, you may destroy a card under it. If you do, gain control of target item with cost 0 or 1 controlled by the attacking hero, and it has temper. This is a sideboard card. That's basically it. There's very few decks that actually really like make this that great. I think it's like Dash.io and maybe even OG Dash to a certain extent, and some Teklovasan decks as well. I guess you can steal like a hyperdriver for max, but like even then, like, are you really gonna use that? I mean, it is negative value for your opponent.
Yeah,
this is like a sideboard low fresh, maybe high stale. This is not what Teklovasan needed. I don't think this solves any problems here.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like thinking about it, it does give you the option to steal gold tokens.
Oh, true.
Yeah, but like even then, I don't know that this is necessarily something that you want to do because it itself is not a base. So this is the arms that you're transforming into if you end up using this. So you're like putting your entire arm slot on this to steal 2 items from your opponent, which is, like you say, it's negative value for your opponent. I do like that, but against other mechanologists, which they'll likely have items in play other than golds, like you can steal. I think the highest value one that I can think of is stealing a Teklo core.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I don't know. I think it's sideboard, probably high stale, maybe mid stale. Even I might be a little bit lower on it than you are, but yeah, I don't know. It's fine. But I think it is more to serve a purpose than it is like a flashy card. It's something that you want to use to sort of trip up your opponent, instead of be proactive about something that you're doing. It's a very reactive card.
Yeah, certainly, and it gives your opponent an opportunity to kind of play around it too, which I don't really love. But
Yeah,
but instant speed is a thing in Teklovasan, so that's also
that's true.
something.
Yeah, you could mess up your opponent before blocks.
Ooh, do you want to read our dear friend Az's card here?
So a little bit of backstory. He was with me in Barcelona when he got the email for this card, and he lost his mind. And it is so understandable why. This is Judge, Jury, and Executioner, which we lovingly refer to as Judge Judy. This is a Ranger attack action arrow. It is a 1-cost red that attacks for 5 and blocks for 3. It is the legendary Azalea specialization. So, like we were kind of saying with Coercive Tendency, you can only play one of this card. You get 1 copy, and thank the Lord, because if this has an aim counter, it gets when this hits a hero, they discard all but 1 card from their hand.
Yeah.
Fresh to death. Fresh to death. This card's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, this is the reason to play aim counters.
Mm-hmm.
This is the reason. Like, you build a deck around it so that when this comes up, you have the ability to just put an aim counter on this and have the effect, give it dominate, give it +3 and a blood rot token on hit. Like, have Rain Razors in hand when your opponent feels like they've blocked enough from it, and then they only get to keep 1 card. Like, this card's nuts. The fact that you can only play 1 of this card is super fantastic, although technically you can still play 4 because we have Codex of Frailty, which was definitely a well-designed card. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, luckily we have that card we just talked about. It totally blanks it. Not really enough for Judge.
Yeah,
Right?
still get
Excuse-
Judge Judy back. Yeah. Anyway, so this card's crazy. High fresh death in Azalea. If you're playing an Azalea deck, you play one of this card. There's no reason not to. It's nuts.
Yeah, and the opportunity cost here is pretty low. You just gotta play one. It's taking up one slot in your deck, and yeah, I mean you said it all. This card is quite good. The effect is really good. You got to be able to give aim counters, which it's becoming increasingly easy for rangers. So yeah, easy fresh to death for Azalea. Now I'm excited to talk about this next one. This one got spoiled while I was actually in the middle of a Riptide versus Dash.io match at the Realm Brawl in Columbus. I had my Apple Watch on, and all I saw was like a Discord notification come up say, "Oh my God, Riptide!" And I was just like, "I gotta finish this game real quick because something's going on." We have Reel In, which is a blue Ranger instant, costs X, and it has an effect that says, "Look at the top X cards +1 of your deck. Choose up to 4 traps, reveal them." Put them into your hand, then shuffle, reload. So, I mean, this is pretty wild, right? So it's saying, hey, like play the traps. There are certain matchups where traps are not good. That's a very real thing for Riptide. Obviously, Azalea can play this too. She can play the traps as well. The reload clause here makes the pitfall traps and the crew traps a lot more playable in Riptide, which they were kind of fringe. You know, it's a little bit clunky to play them sometimes. So where I see this is you almost pitch stack or wait towards the end of the game when you just have like a bunch of traps and your opponent's kind of hoping that they can kind of win. And you're just like, I'm going to just play Reel In, draw 4 traps and kind of deal 4+ damage to you. There's situations where you can go, play this, load a crew trap from your hand into Arsenal, play the crew trap, let this resolve, draw your things, reload another crew trap, play a trap from hand, play another pitfall. There is some crazy stuff you can do with this card. That being said, I think it's like a high fresh. It's not like a fresh to death or anything like that. There is some really cool stuff that you can do, like turn 0 with it or turn 1. Just kind of like get some stuff going, get something into your arsenal, etc. Kind of fix up your hand a little bit. But I do like this card quite a bit. It's not more than a 1 of, I don't think, in Riptide, and that's okay. I think this card's really cool. So I'm going to give it high fresh. I'm excited to play around with it.
Yeah, I as a trap ranger, as not a trap ranger player, I should say, I was very much looking forward to your input on this because I had no idea how to think of it in the broad scheme of things. But I do like it. I do love the possibility of this just being a draw 4, which is something that the game doesn't have yet. It's yet another ranger card that draws more cards than it should. And yeah, I think that it's really funny, like you're saying, the concept of doing this in your opponent's attack like step and just being like, okay, now all of a sudden I have all these traps, and now like you're gonna take 4 damage and all of the effects of the traps that you're gonna have to deal with too. Yeah, I think there's enough traps at this point that you could just build a deck of only traps plus like some like maybe 2 Reel Ins, just to really get like extra value. But yeah, I think I'll agree with you, mostly because I believe you.
Yeah, it's cool because like Riptide's like a deck, especially with Trench, that you can at a minimum filter this out of your hand at some point if you don't if they don't present something that you can trap kill them or something like that, which is really neat. But it's basically a Sonata for Rangers, and well, guess what? Runeblade got another Sonata. What is it?
Yeah, they sure did. This one is Sonata Galaxia. It is a red Runeblade action that blocks for 2, and it has cost XX, which we've seen multiple times. So what do you have? What do you get for paying 2x into this? Well, first of all, it costs 1 resource less to play for each rune chant you control. So you get to increment it by 1 for each 2 rune chants you have, essentially. And this reads, search your deck for a Rune Blade aura with cost X or less, put it into the arena, then shuffle. And then if X is 2 or more, this gets go again. So obviously the pay into this is pretty significant. You would have to, if you don't have rune chants in play, you'd have to pay 4 to make it 2 to give it go again. And then you'd also get a Rune Blade aura. And most of them are not super exciting. There is one that actually did get errated so that it would work with this card, which is Runeblood Barrier. Runeblood Barrier initially was on play, so it wouldn't have counted by just putting it into the arena, but they have changed it so that if you get it off of Sonata Galaxia, it does make you 4 rune chants. However, I do believe it costs 4. So, oh no, it does cost 3. So you'd have to pay 6 into this, or have 6 rune chants, in order to get yourself a Runeblood Barrier to go up to 10 rune chants, and then this would still have go again. I think this is one of those cards that, as the game matures and as more Runeblade auras become available, this will likely get a lot better. But as of right now, it's kind of an underwhelming card, to be honest. I was watching a lot of Runeblade people talk about it when it was first spoiled, and it's like right now the most exciting thing you can do is get Runeblood Barrier, which is you're paying 4 resources instead of 3 to search it from, or no, you're paying 6 resources instead of 3 to search it from your deck and get 4 rune chants, which is whatever. You can also get the invocations from Everfest that give you value over subsequent turns, but yeah, it doesn't actually do a lot. I think somebody else said you can get Looming Doom with it, which is true, which is just kind of funny. Looming Doom on command, but yeah, I don't know. I don't feel this card. I don't see its use. So I think I'm pretty like stale on it overall, but this is another, again, one of those cards that could get better as more things come out.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to lean into that side of this card. Certainly, I think this will end up being like some kind of staple at some point. And currently, I don't know if it's pushing Runeblade in the direction that it needs to go. But there are some uses here. You know, just having 1 rune chant and pitching a blue into it, all of a sudden it does get go again. You can go get Looming Doom or whatever, and that is good and kind of like a cool toolboxy thing. There is variance, not variance here, but you do have to be able to support this card within your deck. That being said, maybe a high stale currently, but the that's the floor, I think, and then it will kind of climb from there as we get more cards. Now, next we have Aether Arc, a wizard action, which actually isn't really that exciting, to be honest. It's a blue 0-cost wizard non-attack action that blocks 3. Deal 1 arcane damage to each opposing hero. Create a ponder token for each hero dealt damage this way. This is a UPF card, and that's cool, I guess. But how many ponders do you need? I think you only need 1, I guess. But maybe there's a reason to have more in UPF that I'm not seeing. For me, this is UPF zone. And that's it. And that's where I'm leaving it.
Yeah, it lives in the UPF zone. I don't think we're gonna run into another Warmongers issue with this one specifically.
I hope not.
I think a lot of people were upset about this card specifically, like, oh, I guess wizards are just never getting a good card ever again. And I do tend to agree. I think it's like in UPF, I think it is good. But I also misread it initially and thought that it was create a ponder token for each damage dealt this way. So I was thinking about it with the like buff cards. So if you're in UPF and you buff this up to like 4 damage to each player, then it's like, oh, I get 12 ponder tokens. Well, which would be hilarious, but it doesn't work that way. So
it doesn't. Now, I will say, just to kind of put on a tinfoil hat, there's talks of a arcane set at some point. Obviously, a lot of wizards running around. If this set's proven anything, LSS loves memes. There's going to be an orb that cares about pondering. And,
yes.
And when it's like sacrifice a ponder to do something is going to be pretty funny And this is going to be a staple in whatever deck that is. Just like a super ponder of orbs.
Yeah, it's gonna be like an offhand, like ponderous orb.
Yeah, which is gonna be dope. It's gonna be really sweet. We have two more cards here. Dissolve Reality. What does this do?
So the final two cards are illusionist cards, which I'm a big fan of. So we have Dissolve Reality as the first of the two. Thumbs down from Mr. Tommy Fresh. So Dissolve Reality is an illusionist action that blocks for 3. It is a yellow that costs 0. So honestly, that stat line on its own is great. Turns on Luminaris. Blocks for 3 is something that illusionist cards, at least the non-attacks, generally don't do. They usually block for 2. And this one is each hero puts all cards in their arsenal on the bottom of their deck and creates a ponder token and go again. So extremely interesting, because this gives you a way to interact with your opponent's arsenal without having to play Command and Conquer and sort of mess up the style of your deck that you're trying to do. I don't know exactly if this is better than something like Lost in Thought, which was hand disruption. It's a good thing that this card isn't red, because then this would just be another tool for Dromai, and everybody knows that we don't need that. So yeah, I like the fact that this is yellow. I am interested to see the release notes to see if, I don't think it's tied to the hero putting a card from their arsenal on the bottom of their deck. So I think this just creates a ponder token at base. Because it would say if they do, they create a ponder token or something similar. So this is also just kind of a draw a card later in the turn type deal. So honestly, I kind of like this. I might even see if I can fit this into Aggro Prism, just as like another yellow that sometimes does some cool stuff. Yeah, it's another one in the long line of sort of tech illusionist cards. So I don't know, sideboard low fresh, I'll say. I do like it, but compared to Lost in Thought, it doesn't do quite as much.
Yeah, God, this is a really hard one to evaluate because I hate it. It's like, I think it's good. It's certainly good. There is some downside, right? If your opponent doesn't have any arsenal, you're just giving them a ponder token too. So like, it's pretty net neutral, almost worse for you in a way when it gets to that point. So you don't even want to play it at that point. But you can block for 3. It is a yellow that matters. Oh man. I think against like Azalea, or like if Lexi was still around. I mean, this is probably pretty. It matters a lot for what do you call it? Living Legends format, right? Like where Lexi is running around, and you can kind of like Prism's also like OG Prism's running around as well, and then gives her another tool. Yeah, I think this is probably like a fresh, but like it sometimes it's going to operate rotten, and sometimes it's going to operate like fresh to death, and that's just where it's going to live. And I think that's probably good. I like cards like that. Like you got to understand the consequences of playing something that has this powerful of an effect. So Dissolve Reality. It's
again another card in the long line of like illusionist cards that when you look at them, you're like, what the hell? What is this?
Like, why did they get that? That's like not cool. And finally, we have they've called it New Numenaris, which we had Luminaris and Numenaris. Now we have New Numenaris. Luminaris, Angel's Glow, Light Illusionist Weapon, Scepter, 2-handed. It's a majestic. If there is a yellow card in your pit zone, the first attack action cards with Herald in its name you play each turn, and your first angel attack each turn gets go again. This is a much needed buff for the new Prism. Is it good enough to make her the truth? It might be. I think this is quite a powerful effect and back to form on Luminaris in terms of the yellow matters. I'm not super stoked about this card, but it's here. It is here, and I like the Heralds and Angels mattering as opposed to the auras mattering, right? Because the auras were what made the original Luminaris really feel busted. So I think this is a lot more fair. But that being said, it's still like a high fresh, I think. I mean, you could argue that is a fresh to death because I think New Prism has to play this. Not has to. Iris is still pretty good, but
Yeah. Like for me, again, because I play this stupid bad blitz deck, I played it against one of my friends. Shout out Carly. You're not listening to this, but I was playing against them with my aggro prism deck, and I was explaining to them what Luminaris does. And I prefaced it with, by the way, this card is not okay. This card is broken. This card should not have been printed, whatever. So I'm glad that they didn't just do that again. But I do think that this is significantly stronger than the rehashed Luminaris that they initially gave Prism, at least New Prism, because this does play directly into what she wants to do. She wants Heralds to hit her soul, and she wants to make Angels. So giving both of those go again means that her turns become very impactful, like very, very strong. You're probably not going more than, this allows you to go 3 wide. You're probably not going more than 3 wide on an average Prism turn, but you can now. And I think that's quite strong. Yeah, I think this is honestly like low fresh to death. I think that this potentially becomes the truth. Yeah, very strong. There was a lot of doomsaying on Twitter when this card got revealed, and I don't disagree.
yeah. Well, they better hope this is the truth because we don't need to see new Numenaris at any point.
New Luminaris.
Well, Bill, we did it. Another set
Tommy.
review in the books. This was a fun set. This is a lot of fun. I think it's a killer. I'm super happy with it. How about you?
I am also really happy about it. I thank you for your patience. I feel like I talked a lot on my turns with stuff, but it's just because, you know, I'm really excited for what the set has to bring to the game. I'm really impressed. Again, I mentioned it a couple times with like how well a lot of the cards are designed. Like everything works really well together. They have really obvious themes that aren't like, they're heavy-handed in that you can trace where they're supposed to go, but they're not heavy-handed in that it's like, oh, here's another one of these, here's another one of these. You can see the purpose for all of the cycles and how they work within their classes. So just a really sick set. And you got a bunch of really cool brute stuff, and I'm really happy for you.
I did. But like, you know, part of me always falls a little bit in love with some of the new heroes too. Like Olympia definitely has my heart, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Me
It's been
too.
a lot of fun. You know, anybody who's listened this far, well, thank you. You're the best. Bill is the best because he does this. You know, and we both just like, it's, I want the listener to know, I always offer Bill, you don't have to do this. You know, you have an out now. And this,
if anything, I'm holding Tommy hostage.
Yeah, he's like, I'm waiting for you to say no. So it's like, oh, well, Bill couldn't do it, so I can't do it. No. Bill's the best. I couldn't do it with anybody else. I don't think it wouldn't be the same. But Bill, please tell everybody that stuck around where they can find you, and everything that's you're doing, fab related and otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you were saying, this is something that I look forward to every set. So I'm glad that you keep inviting me onto it. It's always a really, really fun time. And yeah, I've been Bill from the Spike Feeders. You can find me on social media at BillTSF. I am tenuously active on Twitter, but you can find me there. And because I'm from the Spike Feeders, you can also find me on YouTube at the Spike Feeders Fab. We do live edited gameplay content, usually in a Blitz format, something that we call the Goliath Gauntlet, where we pit a Blitz deck versus a bunch of different decks to sort of give it a vague idea of what it would play against in those, or what it would play like against those different matchups. And yeah, this is always such a great time. I'm really glad that we were able to do this, and I'm really excited about this set. I genuinely really want to build like a KO deck. I think that he's going to be really fun. I think I might also, after all of this and all of our whining about how much of a little prissy baby he looks like, I might want to build a Victor deck.
Victor seems cool, you know, like as a deck, not as a
yeah,
person.
but like, he seems so snotty. Like, he's Draco Malfoy.
Yeah, it really is. God. Yeah, I'm super excited to build. I've already built a lot of Reinhardt decks, to be honest. I'm like, I gotta like see how this controlled discard works with him, but it looks like it's gonna be good. Now, you can continue to find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. Check out the link tree below. We have the Buds Discord. It's a great place to hang out. The Patreon is back up and running now. Now that we're in the new year, take a look. It's one tier, $3 a month, just a cup of coffee or sugar-free Red Bull or something else, whatever you want for a month, and that helps keep the lights on the mics hot. And the YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Go check out the Assault and Battery spoiler video. That was like a lot of fun to make. Check out the Spike Feeders content. They're the best. And Living Legends podcast. We love those guys over there. Thank you all. Enjoy Heavy Hitters. See you next time. Stay fresh.
See you around, everybody.